Chapter 1070. As the news of the 3 origin transformation experts being forced back by the master of the Shao sect spread, an invisible storm quickly swept through the northern wastelands. Shao Yan's name also began to spread among all the large and small organizations in the northern wastelands. In less than 10 days, almost everyone in the northern wastelands knew the name Shao Yan, especially when they heard that the master of the Shao sect was just a young man. Shock and curiosity rose in everyone's hearts. 10 days later, experts from various places began to set off toward Feng City one after another. At this moment, Feng City had already undergone a drastic change. The majestic buildings were like towering mountains in Feng City, causing the entire city to look several times more majestic than before. Even the area it originally occupied had expanded by nearly a third. Currently, it was not just Feng City. Even the area thousands of kilometers away from Feng City had become the territory of the Shao sect. The few spirit veins that belonged to the northern wastelands hall in the past had also been taken over by the Shao sect. Ever since Shao Yan had emerged from his seclusion, the foundation of the Shao sect had risen by several levels in just 10 short days. Other than this, with the arrival of the various factions, quite a number of them had joined Shao Gate. In less than half a month, the number of elite Dou-Di within Shao Gate had nearly doubled compared to half a month ago. This caused Lu Jin and the others to be extremely shocked in their hearts. Additionally, by relying on the large amount of resources that the Northern Wastelands Hall had accumulated in the past, Shao Yan had used medicinal pills as a reward to attract a large number of Dou-Di to join. Other than the 50 Dou-Di that belonged to the Shao sect, there were another 20 that were hired. These people, including most of the people who had joined the Shao sect, had all joined because of the rewards that Shao Yan had given them. This was something that Shao Yan was extremely clear on. With the rapid growth of the Shao sect, 2 months had unknowingly passed. During this period of time, the master of the Shao sect, Shao Yan, had once again disappeared. The crazy absorption caused the territory of Shao Gate to become increasingly large. The number of experts within it caused the expressions of quite a number of factions within the northern wasteland to change. Even though this was the case, these factions still adopted an observing attitude. After all, it was just as Shao Yan had thought. The current Shao Gate was just like a balloon that was swiftly expanding. The people within Shao Gate were like various different kinds of gases. Should one of them suddenly explode, the entire balloon would naturally explode. At that time, the entire Shao Gate would collapse without needing to be attacked. A swift growth would definitely bring about various kinds of criticism to Shao Gate. However, Shao Yan still chose to ignore it. The consequences would naturally be something that he would not be able to endure. The current Shao Gate might appear large on the surface, but it had actually reached the edge of collapse. Shao Yan and the little fairy doctor, Kai Er, were seated in the meeting hall of the Shao sect. At this moment, the little fairy doctor was frowning. Her pretty eyes stared intently at Shao Yan. Her eyes were filled with worry. She had naturally clearly seen the recent situation of Shao Gate with her eyes. Although the number of experts within Shao Gate had increased by quite a lot, the current Shao Gate was still in a state of disunity. There were many things that even she, as the deputy chief, was unable to control. However, Shao Yan, who was the greatest reliance of Shao Gate, was still as calm as usual. He unceremoniously accepted all those outsiders, but it appeared that he had never thought of the consequences. Shao Yan was the greatest reliance of Shao Gate. Shao Yan, many situations have occurred in succession in the Shao sect recently. The few high-class Dou-Di who had just joined have some friction with the people from Fang Tonghui and Lu Cheng's factions. Recently, the city has also become extremely chaotic. Even Kai Er is unable to completely suppress those people. How many elite Dou-Di do we currently have? Shao Yan was not concerned about these questions. Instead, he smiled and asked this question. The little fairy doctor was involuntarily startled when she heard this. She hesitated for a moment before opening her mouth to speak again. Originally, there were 73 of them. However, 16 elite Daoist have left due to the incident in the city during this period of time. Just the high-class Daoist alone accounted for 11 of them. Currently, the remaining elite Daoist in the Shao sect, along with those hired Daoist, is a total of 57 people. 57, huh? That's about right, Xiaoyan smiled. He had naturally clearly seen the situation in the city. However, this kind of situation was not enough to cause him to be worried. He clearly understood that the growth of the Shao sect was too fast. Hence, there would definitely be people who would be eliminated during this process. In reality, those who were able to remain were usually some of the stronger people. Those who were able to survive in this chaos would definitely be the cream of the crop. This was also what Xiaoyan needed. What he needed was not the so-called Daoist but the strong. As long as one's strength was sufficient, one's character was not very important. As for managing the order in the city, it could not be any simpler. Buzz. Soon after the words from Xiaoyan's mouth sounded, a powerful aura and pressure swept out from within Xiaoyan's body. It was just like an invisible storm that instantly swept over the entire Feng city. The expressions of everyone in the city instantly changed drastically. Immediately, a black-robed human figure appeared in the sky above Feng City when everyone in the city raised their heads. Soon after, two beautiful figures also followed and stood beside the black-robed person. Countless number of people in the city below wore shocked expressions as they looked at the black-robed human figure in the sky. Their hearts were incomparably shocked. There was no need to say anything. This black-robed person who had suddenly appeared was undoubtedly the chief of the Shao sect, Xiaoyan. Although most of the people in the city had heard of this sect leader Zhao's name, there were not many people who had truly seen the latter's appearance. At this moment, when they saw him, everyone in the city knew exactly what was called a dragon among men, an outstanding talent among outstanding talents. This is the chief. It is unexpected that he actually looks even younger than what is rumored in the outside world. His cultivation has actually reached the intermediate level of the origin transformation stage at such a young age. TSK, how amazing. Hey, from today onwards, there will be another giant in the northern region. With the chief present, I want to see if those factions will still dare to be arrogant. Xiaoyan's appearance immediately caused a commotion in the city. At this moment, everyone in the originally chaotic city had simultaneously shifted their gazes to Xiaoyan. Cuckoo, I think that everyone has already heard that this time around, our Shao sect is about to lead our troops into the western region to attack a faction in the western region. Since everyone present is willing to stay, I think that you all agree with our Shao sect's plan this time around. Since this is the case, I promise everyone that after this matter is completed, I will reward everyone with an extreme transformation pill. Additionally, I will also reward you with another medicinal pill based on your contribution. The faces of all the elite Daoist present simultaneously revealed a fiery hot expression when they heard about the extreme transformation pill. The extreme transformation pill was a medicinal pill that could allow an elite Daoist to raise their cultivation. How could they not be moved? Honestly speaking, which of the elite Daoist present did not join the Shao sect for the sake of the extreme transformation pill? Without any benefits, how could these fellows, who lived on the edge of their blades, willingly join a faction? Now that Xiaoyan had mentioned the extreme transformation pill, the interest of these fellows was immediately piqued. Chief, you can rest assured. As long as we are around, we don't care what kind of dog shit sect it is. With so many elite Daoist here, even if each of us spit a mouthful of saliva, it would be enough to drown it. Ha 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 ha, immediately, a wave of laughter sounded within the city. Xiaoyan was unconcerned about this. He laughed softly and took the opportunity to speak. I feel extremely gratified that everyone has such confidence. However, the trip to the western region this time around is not child's play. Therefore, I have no choice but to seriously inform everyone that I must select a portion of the stronger experts from among you to accompany me to the western region. As for the others, I hope that you can continue to guard the northern region. The foundation of our Xiao sect will be handed to you. The moment his voice sounded, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's heart without waiting for everyone in the city to react. A powerful aura and pressure suddenly landed in the city. The frightening aura and pressure pressed down on everyone until they bent their backs. Their entire faces instantly turned bright red. There were even quite a number of people whose faces had revealed a pale white expression. Facing the pressure of an origin transformation expert, it was truly difficult for them to contend against it. Everyone, from now on, anyone among you who can withstand my pressure and step into the air, even if it's just a single step, will join my group heading to the western region. On the other hand, you will be stationed in Feng City. The choice is entirely up to everyone. The hearts of everyone in the city were immediately shocked when these words were uttered. Xiao Yan actually wanted them to withstand the pressure of an origin transformation expert and even wanted them to step into the air. Was this not a little too unrealistic? Of course, as a form of encouragement, from now on, anyone who can withstand my aura and pressure and step into the void within 10 minutes will receive a 5th-grade medicinal pill. Xiao Yan's words were like a shot of adrenaline to everyone present. In an instant, the blood of all the people suppressed by Xiao Yan's aura began to boil. Every single one of them had scarlet eyes as they crazily circulated the dou qi in their bodies. All the muscles on their bodies bulged as they attempted to stand up straight under Xiao Yan's pressure. At that moment, the allure of a Tier 5 medicinal pill was perfectly displayed. Everyone in the city, regardless of whether they were an elite Dou Di, a Ban Di, or an existence with an even weaker cultivation, hoped to attempt to break through Xiao Yan's aura pressure. Unfortunately, not a single person had truly stood up and walked into the sky from the beginning until the end. The person they were facing was, after all, a middle-level origin transformation expert. The gap between a Dou Di and an origin transformation expert could not be bridged. No matter how hard they tried, they were unable to break through. On the other hand, Xiao Yan, who was in the sky, sighed as he looked at the few spots in the crowd below. His eyes contained some anticipation. I say, since when have you become so generous with a Tier 5 medicinal pill? You seem to have only refined a total of 5 origin gathering pills, right? At this moment, the little fairy doctor by the side suddenly opened her mouth with a mocking expression. She did not believe that Xiao Yan was able to take out a rank 5 medicinal pill. It was likely that these words were at the very most used to scare the Dou Di in the city below. Huh, you seem to have forgotten. Although I don't have any other medicinal pills, there are some Tier 5 medicinal pills in the Northern Wasteland Hall's warehouse. Other than a small portion of them, most of them can barely be used as finished pills. Rather than keeping them, it is better to give them to them. Xiao Yan smiled craftily. Although those Tier 5 medicinal pills could barely be used, they were not good things in his eyes. If they could bring him some convenience, it was fine to give them to these people. 10 minutes later, there were indeed 6 people in the crowd below who were walking in the air. 3 of them had only lifted their feet. However, this could be considered to have completed Xiao Yan's request. Naturally, they also received the rewards that Xiao Yan had promised. 2 hours later, with Xiao Yan purposely going easy on them, there were less than 30 people in the entire Feng City who had joined Xiao Yan's group. Although the number was not large, Xiao Yan was extremely satisfied with this. The quality of an army was more important than the quantity. What Xiao Yan needed was true strength and not a group of stragglers. With the addition of 31 high-class Dou Di, there were a total of 34 high-class Dou Di including Lu Jin and the other 2. These 3 fellows were really careful. None of the elite Dou Di from the factions behind them were willing to join. They even righteously said that they were preserving the strength of the Xiao Gate to avoid being attacked from both front and back. Xiao Yan could only coldly laugh in his heart in response to this. After giving a soft laugh, he led the group and flew toward a city in the northern wasteland that had a transportation formation that led to the western region. Along the way, the mighty group attracted the attention of quite a number of people. When they recognized the black-robed young man leading the group, their faces revealed shocked expressions. Some of the sect leaders from the factions that passed by even came forward to make contact with them. It seemed that they were afraid that these people were here to attack them. There were even some people with strong characters who released their sect's formation at Xiao Yan's group from a distance. Only when they saw that Xiao Yan's group had disappeared from their sight did the sect leader finally relax in fear. A few days later, this group of people arrived at a city called Wu City. The mighty group of people could not help but once again cause a commotion. It was only when this group of people quietly stood in the large plaza in the city and were surrounded by a formation that the people in the city finally understood that this group of people had actually come for the transportation formation. As they stood on the transportation formation, a golden light flashed. This large group of people, who had caused everyone in the city to be alarmed just a moment ago, quickly and leisurely disappeared from the formation. A short while later, a golden light flashed on another large plaza in the western region. A large group of people suddenly appeared in the city. In front of the crowd, Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the sky above him. A stern expression gradually surged into his eyes. Western region, Yi Luo Tian, I have returned. Chapter 1071. There was a total of over 30 people in the group. Although there were not many of them in terms of numbers, their mighty aura shook everyone in the city the moment they appeared. Everyone who saw the sudden appearance of this enormous force was shocked. When they looked at the group from Xiao Gate, they completely ignored the gazes of others. Under Xiao Yan's lead, the group headed south in a mighty manner. Through the map, Xiao Yan clearly knew their current location. They were currently at the northernmost part of the Shilin region. Directly south was the Green Hunchback Mountain. The original base of the four great sects had likely already fallen into Yi Luotian's hands. The forces of the four great sects had likely been completely taken over by the latter. With the four great sects united as one, even though the sect was no longer as prosperous as before, its foundation was definitely several times greater than before. Where are we going now? On a mountain peak, the little fairy doctor glanced at the map in Xiao Yan's hand and asked curiously. By the side, Kai Er's gaze also looked over. The group behind her were sizing up this world in a bored manner. It was rumored that the western region was a barren land. However, from the looks of it, it seemed to be quite different from the legends. I heard that the western region is divided into the Shilin region and the western desolate region. Looks like our current location should be in the Shilin region. A glint flashed across Fang Tonghui's eyes as he smilingly opened his mouth to explain. That's right. Next, we will head there. Xiao Yan curled his lips and smiled. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He extended his finger and pointed at a coordinate on the map. It was the Green Hunchback Mountain. With a wave of his large hand, he led the group behind him and swiftly flew towards the south. An hour later, the group of over 30 people arrived at the Green Hunchback Mountain. The so-called Green Hunchback Mountain did not refer to a mountain, but a vast mountain range. In the past, the Green Hunchback Mountain was jointly divided by the four major sects of the Shilin region, each occupying a corner of the mountain happily. However, now, ever since the four major sect leaders had fallen in the ancient Tomb of Heaven's End, the Withered Leaf sect, as one of the four major sects, had finally revealed its true nature and ambition. Within a short half a month, he had taken in all the remaining people from the other three large sections. As the saying goes, those who submit will prosper while those who resist will die. In order to completely control the four large sects, Yi Luo Tian had killed quite a number of people during the subsequent period of time. The number of people who had been killed because they had rebelled against Yi Luo Tian was countless. There were even many elite Do Di among them. It was also because of this that the rebellion within the sect was swiftly suppressed by his bloody methods. The remaining people were also extremely terrified of him. In the following period of time, no one dared to oppose him. No one dared to refute Yi Luotian's words. The current Green Hunchback Mountain had undergone a drastic change under Yi Luotian's inhumane management. Large and small buildings had been built throughout the mountain range. The symbol of the withered leaf sect was everywhere. Even after many years, the murderous aura still appeared unusually solemn in this place. It was even possible to see a thin layer of blood fog in the sky. From this, one could imagine just how many people Yi Luotian had killed a few years ago in order to control this place. Xiao Yan's group did not say much after arriving at Green Hunchback Mountain. They used the most forceful method to kill a couple of the upper echelon elders of the Withered Leaf sect in the shortest amount of time. The remaining people were dismissed by Xiao Yan. In the end, only the first elder of the Withered Leaf sect was brought in front of Xiao Yan. There was no pity in Xiao Yan's eyes as he looked at the yellow-robed old man in front of him. The person in front of him might appear a little pitiful at this moment, but Xiao Yan had personally witnessed this fellow killing people in a merciless manner just a few minutes ago. The expression on his face was clearly incomparably carefree. Not killing such a person would be going against the heavens. How could there be any pity? In the face of Xiao Yan's group and after witnessing how powerful they were, the yellow-robed old man finally revealed a terrified expression. His body trembled as he knelt in front of Xiao Yan and continuously kowtowed. There was no longer any trace of his previous awe-inspiring appearance. Elder, this junior has never met Elder before. I wonder if Elder can spare this junior on account of my old age. This junior will definitely be eternally grateful. The old man's tone was panicked as he opened his mouth. His words were filled with terror. His entire body trembled repeatedly as he spoke. Cold sweat fell like rain. Even though Xiao Yan did not use any tactics, he was still frightened until his face turned green. That's right. I want to know the development of the Withered Leaf sect over the past few years, as well as Yi Luotian's current location. Xiao Yan was expressionless. Even though it was true that he had destroyed the Withered Leaf sect's current location, from the surface, Green Hunchback Mountain was not Yi Luotian's true location. Otherwise, he would not have only sent a few ordinary Dodi to guard this place. Moreover, all the resources in Green Hunchback Mountain had already been taken away by Yi Luotian. The current Green Hunchback Mountain was just like an empty mountain. The expression on the yellow-robed old man's face immediately changed when he heard Xiao Yan mention Yi Luotian. Before he had time to think, Xiao Yan's frightening aura suddenly descended on the old man's head. The frightening aura instantly pressed down on him until he could not breathe. His green face turned purple-red. The bones and internal organs in his body were ruthlessly crushed by Xiao Yan's aura. Qi flowed in all directions uncontrollably and his entire body changed color in an instant. It was a long while later when the yellow-robed old man's body was about to explode. Only then did he hurriedly nod his head with a face filled with fear. At the same time, the aura that descended on his head abruptly scattered. After which, the yellow-robed old man spoke of Yi Luotian's current situation with a heart filled with fear. When this information was transmitted to Xiao Yan's ears, the expression on the latter's face gradually became gloomy. In the end, a rich killing intent surged onto his face. Even the aura within his body had involuntarily become violent. Bang! Just as the yellow-robed old man's words sounded, Xiao Yan flipped his hand and angrily swatted the latter's head. The old man's body emitted a bang and exploded into a bloody fog that scattered across the sky. The expressions of the crowd behind him suddenly became shocked. It was very difficult to imagine that Xiao Yan, who had always appeared incomparably calm, would actually suddenly change his expression because of the yellow-robed old man's words. Even his mental state was no longer calm. Let's go to the Shilin Mountain Range. Chapter 1072. According to the yellow-robed elder, 4 years ago, Yi Luotian had joined forces with the number 1 faction in the western region, the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Both parties had joined forces to dominate the western region. The originally low-key Qin Wasteland Maze Valley suddenly appeared for some unknown reason and no longer hid in the western region. Instead, together with Yi Luotian, they began to endlessly swallow up all the factions in the western region. In the short span of 4 years, over half of the factions in the western region, which had originally occupied their own territories, had been razed to the ground by the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. The experts in their sects had either submitted to the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley or been completely annihilated. In these 4 years, 1/5 of the so-called top 500 factions in the western region had been destroyed. Even the ordinary disciples in some of the sects had not been able to escape being killed. From this, one could see how ruthless the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was. Over the past few years, the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley had not only expanded their influence in the western wasteland region, they had also extended their reach into the Shilin region. Now, countless forces of various sizes in the Shilin region had been swallowed up by them. According to the yellow-robed elder, recently, the valley master of the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley, accompanied by Yi Luo Tian, had headed to the last area in the Shilin region that had not been swallowed up by them. Shilin Mountain Range. The Shilin Mountain Range had been divided by magical beasts all year round. The 4 great beast kings in the depths of the Shilin Mountain Range had caused countless experts to tremble in fear. This was especially so for the one in the hinterland of Shilin. It was a figure that could cause the entire western region to tremble. However, this time, the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley and Yi Luotian's goal was the latter. Not only did they want to swallow the Shilin Mountain Range, they also wanted to take down the king of the Shilin Mountain Range, Lengbing Shuang. In the depths of the Shilin Mountain Range. A mighty group stood in the depths of the Shilin Mountain Range. On the opposite mountain peak, a few figures were standing, blocking the group's path. When one turned around and looked behind this group, the endless mountain range was filled with a sea of fire. Countless magical beast corpses were strewn all over the place. Wildfire spread and gradually covered the entire Shilin Mountain Range. My Shilin Mountain Range has never had any conflicts with the outside world. Why must you act in this manner? Among the group, Tianing, who was dressed in blue robes, stood up. He had a sullen expression as he looked at the group of people before him. Although there weren't many people on the other side, each of them had a strong aura. They couldn't be compared to them at all, especially the 2 people in the lead. Although they didn't reveal any aura, the invisible pressure contained in the special momentum made them feel even more dangerous. This feeling was something they had only felt before when they faced the Great Lord in the hinterlands of Shilin. This also meant that the 2 people before them had probably already stepped into the origin transformation realm. An origin transformation expert. Sky Eagle's heart shuddered. He stepped forward but did not retreat. However, the expression on his face became even more solemn. Humph, Lengbing Shuang, I haven't seen you for a few years. I wonder if your injuries have healed. Ha ha ha. I know you're in there. What's wrong? You don't even dare to face me when you see me. Oh right, how does it feel when the cold poison flares up? Is it very uncomfortable? Ha ha ha. Ignoring Tian Ying's words, one of the 2 leaders, a middle-aged man in blue robes, looked towards the depths of the Shilin Mountain Range with an evil grin on his face. With his cultivation, he could clearly sense an extremely powerful and familiar aura. The owner of that aura was undoubtedly Lengbing Shuang. Loud laughter rang out, shaking the entire mountain range. His mighty voice even caused the snow in the hinterlands of Shilin to pause slightly. This was enough to show how powerful this person's cultivation was. Humph, not going to speak? Then I'll just start with your trash subordinates. I don't believe you won't attack. With a cold smile, the middle-aged man waved his hand the instant his word sounded. A sharp energy pillar immediately shot out like lightning. In the blink of an eye, it had already appeared in front of Sky Eagle and viciously chopped toward Sky Eagle's head. Even with Sky Eagle's cultivation, it was impossible for him to dodge such a powerful attack. Hence, he could only watch as the energy pillar approached. Soon after, just as the energy pillar was about to land on Sky Eagle's head, a large black figure suddenly flashed out in front of him. With a poochie sound, fresh blood splattered and a painful roar was emitted. However, the energy pillar that was about to land on Sky Eagle's head was successfully blocked. When the people present focused their eyes, they saw that the thing blocking in front of the Sky Eagle was actually an enormous python. On the head of the large python was a single horn that was shaped like lightning. The black scales that covered its body had also been forcefully shattered after blocking the attack. Its body was bloody, and it was even possible to clearly see the dense white bones that were exposed in the air. Scaled snake. Scaled snake was originally a narwhal snake. However, after it had exited its retreat, Sky Eagle and the others had given it this name out of convenience in the face of the 9-star Dodi narwhal snake. Being a 9-star Dodi, the narwhal snake had always been the strongest amongst the 5 of them. Its strength could be said to be powerful. However, it appeared to be unable to withstand a single blow from an expert at the origin transformation stage. Ha ha ha, I really didn't expect that this fellow would actually block this attack for you. What a reckless idiot. The most untrustworthy thing in this world is your so-called friendship. In the face of benefits, it's not worth mentioning at all. That middle-aged man laughed when he saw this. His face was filled with disdain and ridicule. Deep within his eyes, there was an expression of hatred. A person like you is not worthy of friendship. Sky Eagle's face was filled with fury as he turned around and shot over. Both of his fists were clenched tightly. The Do Chi within his body flowed wildly. His blue eyes were filled with an endless killing intent. Humph humph humph. I am not worthy. It is not up to you to say such words. Tyrannical killing intent was suddenly revealed on the middle-aged man's face the instant Sky Eagle's words sounded. His body abruptly turned and appeared in front of Sky Eagle in the blink of an eye. He lifted his right hand and powerful Genesis Chi gathered on his palm, causing his hand to appear as sharp as a blade as he viciously hacked at Sky Eagle's head. This time, no one would be able to save him in time. Ha! It was at this moment that an ice-cold furious roar suddenly sounded. The temperature of the area abruptly plummeted at the same time. At the same time, an icy blue ice mirror suddenly appeared in front of Sky Eagle like a ghost, once again blocking the middle-aged man's attack for him. Oh! Great Tao of Ice, Leng Bingshuang, you have finally intervened. Chapter 1073. In the depths of the Shilin mountain range, the middle-aged man viciously slammed his palm against the ice mirror before him. A violent force immediately erupted, and he used the opportunity to rapidly retreat. In the blink of an eye, he had already returned to the side of the other person. When he stopped, the middle-aged man quickly lifted his gaze and looked over. He saw that at the place where the ice mirror had been, a beautiful woman in an icy blue dress was standing proudly. Her beautiful icy blue eyes were also staring at the 2 people in front of her with endless coldness. Ha ha ha. Leng Bingshuang, you're finally willing to come out. And here I thought you would only guard your crappy place and never come out. The middle-aged man sneered. His gaze constantly swept over Leng Bingshuang's proud body, but there was not the slightest lust in his eyes. There was only endless killing intent. At his level, he no longer had the desire for women that he had when he was young. The only thing in his heart right now was power. Great power was the main theme of this world. Qin Shua, today, this king will settle the debt from back then. Upon hearing Qin Shua's words, the expression on Leng Bingshuang's pretty face became even colder. She gently lifted her beautiful eyes and the temperature of the world instantly dropped by quite a bit. At the same time, Qin Shua and the rest could clearly see that the surface of Leng Bingshuang's skin, which was exposed to the air, was actually covered by a thin layer of ice. A sinister aura immediately spread out from Leng Bingshuang's body. Even with Qin Shua's cultivation, he could not help but be surprised when he sensed the chilling presence. Just from this point alone, he could clearly sense that not only had the chilling poison in Leng Bingshuang's body been purged, her cultivation had also increased. She had reached the peak of the late origin transformation realm. Even when compared to him, she was not inferior. The peak of the late origin transformation realm. How is this possible? Just what has this woman done in these past few years? She was in the heart of Shilin, where the chilling qi is abundant. How could she purge the chilling poison in her body? Sensing this, Qin Shua's expression immediately changed slightly. If that was the case, subduing Leng Bingshuang would require a lot more effort. It's Xiao Yan. That brat has a strange flame. He must have helped Leng Bingshuang get rid of the cold poison in her body. Otherwise, she would never have recovered. At the side, an old man in a hemp robe stood up. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Leng Bingshuang opposite him. A sneer flashed across the depths of his eyes. Xiao Yan? It was that Xiao Yan again. Yi Luo Tian, where is this brat you were talking about? I've already searched the entire western region, but I still haven't found him. Where exactly is he? Upon hearing the old man's words, Qin Shua's face immediately revealed an uncontrollable killing intent. He would definitely avenge his son's death. The linen-robed old man beside him was Yi Luo Tian. Valley Master, that kid has been missing all these years, and we've already searched half of the western region. Now, this is the only place left. Are you saying that Xiao Yan is here? There's no other place. Yi Luo Tian nodded with a solemn expression. After some thought, Qin Shua turned his head and his gaze landed on Leng Bingshuang's body. His eyes were ice-cold as he reprimanded. Leng Bingshuang, it seems that not only will I be able to settle the score between us today, I will also be able to take revenge for my son. In response to Qin Shua's words, Leng Bingshuang's pretty face was ice-cold. Not a single ripple of emotion could be seen on her face, but the terrifying cold qi that spread from her body grew increasingly dense. Leng Bingshuang, die. Suddenly, Qin Shua's body moved, and Genesis qi surged from his body. He crossed his hands in front of him, and two short spears condensed from ice appeared in his hands. The spears intersected, and two powerful streams of energy shot out, shooting towards Leng Bingshuang along with his body. In the face of Qin Shua's attack, Leng Bingshuang did not dodge or evade. Her slender jade-like hand viciously swiped in front of her as ice rapidly condensed in her palm. The instant her jade-like hand clenched, an icy blue longsword also condensed and formed. The longsword spun in her hand as Genesis qi shot out, neutralizing the two incoming pillars of energy. Next, her delicate body trembled slightly before disappearing from the spot in the blink of an eye. Clang 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 clang, almost in the next instant, the crisp sound of metal colliding rang out in the sky. The two figures intertwined rapidly, and the two short spears and the slender ice sword rapidly clashed. Intense sounds of collision rang out one after another, and waves of powerful energy ripples continuously swept out between the heavens and earth. The expressions of everyone present changed drastically in the face of such a lineup. All the elite Do-Di felt extremely shocked in their hearts. The advanced level of the origin transformation stage was really this frightening. Such strength was like the difference between the sky and the earth when compared to them, the so-called elite Do-Di. No wonder it was said that the gap between the origin transformation stage and the Do-Di stage was like a watershed. From this battle, everyone present could clearly see just how huge the gap was between them and the two before them. A so-called Do-Di was nothing in front of an origin transformation stage expert. After hundreds of moves, the battle between the two was still undecided. On the other hand, Yi Luotian's heart sank as he looked at Qin Shua in the arena. If this fellow continued to fight like this, it was likely that the outcome would not be what he hoped for. After several hundred exchanges, not only was Leng Bingshuang not defeated, she had even suppressed Qin Shua. As the cold qi in Leng Bingshuang's body grew denser and denser, her aura also grew stronger and stronger. If this continued, Leng Bingshuang's cultivation would break through to the returnant stage. Such a strange scene immediately caused Yi Luo Tian to feel uneasy. With a thought, the Genesis qi in his body began to circulate. Yi Luo Tian found an opportunity. The instant Qin Shua and Leng Bingshuang clashed again, his body under the linen robes suddenly flashed. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared in front of the two. With a flip of his hand, his palm viciously landed on Leng Bingshuang's shoulder. Ugh! Fresh blood splattered and Leng Bingshuang's lovely body suddenly trembled. A muffled snort was emitted from her pretty nose. Her body swiftly dodged. Even though she managed to avoid the vital parts of her body, the two short spears still left a couple of scars on her soft and boneless lovely body. Bright red fresh blood immediately dyed her icy blue dress red. Leng Bingshuang's figure rapidly retreated as the four Heavenly Eagle members hurriedly rushed forward to protect her. Their faces were filled with killing intent as they stared at Yi Luotian and Qin Shuo. Despicable. Leng Bingshuang endured the intense pain in her body as she wiped away the fresh blood from the corner of her mouth. She could not help but curse out loud. Hee, the winner is king while the loser is in the wrong. We never said it would be a one-on-one, it's just your own wishful thinking. Yi Luotian snorted in response, while Qin Shuo angrily glared at Yi Luotian as he coldly reprimanded. Bastard, didn't I say that this is a battle between me and her? Since when did you have the right to interfere? Valley Master, you should know the situation better than I do. If I had not intervened, I'm afraid, you. Upon hearing this, Qin Shuo hatefully gritted his teeth and withdrew his gaze. Yi Luotian shot a glance at the former as he could not help but icily chuckle in his heart. Extremely obscure killing intent swiftly flitted across the depths of his eyes. Next, Yi Luotian stepped forward with an icy smile. A casual wave of his hand was all it took to seriously injure the Heavenly Eagle members and send them flying. Next, he arrived in front of Leng Bingshuang. Although the latter still wanted to retaliate, Yi Luotian's attack had scattered all the Genesis Qi in her body, making it impossible for her to gather it again for a short period of time. Hence, she could only helplessly watch as Yi Luotian lifted his hand and swung it at her head. Leng Bingshuang, if you want to blame someone, blame yourself for saving Xiao Yan back then. Then, as Yi Luotian's palm landed, the sound of wind whistling suddenly filled the air. Almost at the same time, a black-robed figure appeared in front of Leng Bingshuang like a ghost. A palm covered in light blue flames violently collided with Yi Luotian's descending palm with a loud bang. Chapter 1074. Bang! In the depths of the Shilin mountain range, a muffled thump resounded across the horizon. At almost the same time, Yi Luotian, who had been attacking Leng Bingshuang, was also blown back by this sudden attack. The ferocious and domineering force sent Yi Luotian flying. The powerful force even forcefully broke the bones in his arm, while the blood in his body churned. In the blink of an eye, Yi Luotian's figure had disappeared from this world. Only a muffled thump could be heard. It was clear that the latter had smashed into the mountain range in the distance. As for the exact situation, even Qin Shuo, who was present, had no idea. The sudden change in the battlefield caused everyone present to be instantly stunned. Numerous shocked gazes simultaneously landed on the black-robed figure who had suddenly appeared in front of them. When everyone saw the latter's handsome face, the shock in their hearts was even more irreplaceable. Xiao Yan raised his head and looked at the group of people in front of him. His extremely cold gaze paused on Qin Shuo, who was leading the group. The latter's heart immediately became cold. This black-robed young man in front of him actually gave him an unknown pressure. Subsequently, Xiao Yan's gaze turned and looked at the pale Leng Bingshuang behind him. When Xiao Yan bent down, Leng Bingshuang was also staring at Xiao Yan in shock. The shock in her heart was indescribable. Over the past few years, Leng Bingshuang had never heard of any trace of the latter. Back then, Xiao Yan had left for the western wastelands and never returned. She had even almost believed that the latter was dead. She never expected that Xiao Yan would suddenly appear at her most dangerous moment. Moreover, his strength seemed to have reached an extremely frightening level. Unfortunately, given her current condition, she was unable to detect the depth of Xiao Yan's aura. The bent Xiao Yan did not hesitate. With a flip of his hand, he retrieved a Tier 5 pill from his storage ring. Without waiting for Leng Bingshuang's consent, he directly stuffed it into her mouth. Immediately, a warm medicinal power immediately spread throughout Leng Bingshuang's body. The warm feeling that was transmitted from within her body caused Leng Bingshuang's nose to involuntarily emit a soft moan. The expression on Xiao Yan's face involuntarily froze. Leng Bingshuang also hurriedly turned her head. After which, Xiao Yan stood up. His eyes then looked towards Tian Ying's group, who had landed on the mountain peak in the distance. At this moment, the 5 of them were already seriously injured. However, their eyes were still filled with shock as they looked at Xiao Yan. Their eyes were filled with joy. Although they were unable to discern the depth of Xiao Yan's cultivation, from the previous attack, with Xiao Yan present today, these people in the Qin desolate Maze Valley were destined to be unable to do anything to them. This was a kind of trust, a trust towards Xiao Yan's strength. Under Leng Bingshuang's shocked gaze, Xiao Yan carried the latter's delicate body and placed her beside Sky Eagle and the rest. After which, he fed them elixirs before he once again flashed into the sky. His icy gaze once again looked towards Qin Shuo and the rest. "Brat, who are you?" With Qin Shuo's cultivation, he was naturally able to see through Xiao Yan's background with a single glance. The middle level of the origin transformation realm. It must be said that it was indeed very shocking for a young man to possess such a cultivation. However, it would be wishful thinking for Qin Shuo to rely on such a cultivation to deal with him. The difference between the origin transformation cultivators was as large as a chasm. Even if there was only a slight difference, it would be enough for him to crush his opponent, let alone when he was facing Xiao Yan, who was only at the mid-origin transformation realm. Xiao Yan. The instant the words left his mouth, Xiao Yan's figure immediately turned into a streak of light. He was as fast as lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he had already appeared before Qin Shuo. A fist viciously smashed towards Qin Shuo's head. "You're Xiao Yan?" Hearing this name, Qin Shuo was immediately shocked. He never would have thought that this so-called Xiao Yan was actually just a young man. "Humph, Xiao Yan, since you've delivered yourself to me, I'll deal with you and Leng Bingshuang together today." Seeing Xiao Yan charge over, Qin Shuo did not back down. With a wave of his hands, 2 short spears appeared in his hands once more. With a flash, the sharp tips of the spears viciously stabbed towards Xiao Yan's head. The way the 2 of them fought with their lives on the line shocked the surrounding onlookers. However, in the next moment, Qin Shuo twisted his body. While the short spears continued to stab forward, they managed to avoid hitting his vitals. On the other hand, Xiao Yan did not dodge. When the short spear was shot over, the speed at which he attacked suddenly increased. At the same time, a ferocious heavenly flame instantly gushed out with a puff sound and swiftly wrapped around his entire body. A frighteningly high temperature was immediately released. One could see that the short spear that was swiftly piercing toward Xiao Yan actually swiftly melted in front of the heavenly flame, at a speed visible to the naked eye. Almost at the same time, Xiao Yan's fist also suddenly trembled. From an extremely strange angle, it violently smashed into Qin Shuo's chest. Bang! The ice spears melted and the Genesis Qi on them scattered. On the other hand, Qin Shuo's fist-wrapped fist viciously smashed into his chest. The embroidered robes he wore instantly exploded into fragments that filled the air from front to back. The terrifying force forcefully shattered the bones in his chest, causing his entire face to instantly turn red. Subsequently, with a pupuchi sound, a large mouthful of blood was violently vomited. His muscular body uncontrollably flew backwards and smashed into the crowd behind him. When everyone focused their gazes, they saw that there was an inch-deep fist imprint on Qin Shuo's chest. Fresh blood continuously gushed out around the bright red fist imprint. His face had also instantly turned deathly white and the aura in his body had become extremely chaotic. Quickly after, Xiao Yan moved once again, forcing his way into the crowd. Under everyone's horrified gazes, Xiao Yan punched one after another. In the short span of a few breaths, over a dozen Do-D experts were completely annihilated by Xiao Yan. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to attack Qin Shuo again, Yi Luo Tian, who had originally been sent flying, suddenly appeared at some unknown point in time and forcefully pushed back Xiao Yan. By the time Xiao Yan returned to his senses, Yi Luo Tian had already swiftly fled the area with Qin Shuo. Soon after, Xiao Yan, who was originally about to give chase, was suddenly attracted by a cry of surprise from the mountain behind him. The instant he turned his head, he saw Ling Bingshuang, who had been resting after consuming a medicinal pill. For some unknown reason, a thin layer of ice had suddenly appeared on her lovely body, rapidly covering it at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. As a result, Ling Bingshuang had fainted. Chapter 1075. Western Region, deep within the Shilin mountain range, at the bottom of a blazing volcano. Xiao Yan's expression was grave as he looked at Ling Bingshuang, whose entire body was covered by a layer of solid ice. His heart was incomparably anxious. He did not expect that in order to deal with Qin Shuo, Ling Bingshuang would actually use such an extreme method to raise her own strength. The latter's action was no different from committing suicide. After a simple investigation, Xiao Yan clearly discovered that there was actually a small piece of ice crystal within Ling Bingshuang's body. The reason for her current state was also because of that ice crystal. That piece of ice crystal was no ordinary ice. It was an extreme cold ice soul. In order to be able to obtain sufficient strength in a short period of time, Ling Bingshuang had actually forcefully obtained an extreme cold ice soul from the icy spirit cold spring and swallowed it into her body. This also led to the latter's current state. Endless cold energy uncontrollably spread out. The powerful energy allowed Ling Bingshuang to possess a frightening one-sided battle strength when fighting against Qin Shuo. However, at the same time, the spreading of the cold energy within her body also affected her internal organs and bones in the shortest amount of time. Under Xiao Yan's investigation, the cold ice had already covered a large portion of Ling Bingshuang's internal organs. Extremely cold temperatures were continuously being released and the life within her body was disappearing at an extremely fast rate. Currently, the cold ice that wrapped around Ling Bingshuang's body was nothing much. However, the most important thing was the extreme cold ice soul within her body. If the cold energy within was allowed to continue spreading, it was likely that even with Ling Bingshuang's cultivation, it would be very difficult for her to survive. Due to their respective injuries, Tianying and the rest did not follow Xiao Yan into this place. Hence, at this moment, only Xiao Yan and Ling Bingshuang were at the bottom of this cave. Puff! Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan extended his hand and waved. Pale blue flames immediately gushed out. The raging flames immediately covered the layer of ice on the surface of Ling Bingshuang's body. A terrifyingly high temperature was also released. Immediately, the originally solid layer of ice rapidly melted at a speed visible to the naked eye. Only when Ling Bingshuang's delicate body was once again exposed to the air did the heavenly flame quietly dissipate. Although the ice layer was broken, it could not solve the problem. Xiao Yan, who was well aware of this, did not have any hesitation. Then, he pointed out two fingers and touched Ling Bingshuang's forehead. A small flame ignited. The blue flame released a scorching temperature and invaded Ling Bingshuang's body, protecting her mind from being invaded by the cold air. Then, Xiao Yan made a series of moves. After a little flame on his hands and feet, he turned his gaze back to Ling Bingshuang's proud body. Looking at the delicate body in front of him, Xiao Yan frowned. His face could not help but reveal a difficult expression. He knew that this woman was not to be trifled with. Last time, she had almost taken his life. If she were to do it again, it would be very difficult for her to let him off. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan could not help but clench his teeth and frown as he pondered. Now, even saving her had become a big problem. After a long while, Xiao Yan, who saw the ice on Ling Bingshuang's delicate body once again, finally made up his mind. Saving her was the most important thing. Moreover, Leng Bingshuang had saved his life before. Even if they had already settled the score, with Xiao Yan's character, it was impossible for him to not save the latter. Sorry, I have no choice but to do this. Clenching his teeth, Xiao Yan stretched out his right hand, bent his 5 fingers, and landed on Leng Bingshuang's lower abdomen. Immediately, a refreshing ice-cold aura gushed out like a fountain, rushing straight to Xiao Yan's palm. Feeling this sudden energy impact, Xiao Yan's face suddenly changed. With a thought, a ferocious flame suddenly surged out, covering his entire palm. Then, at the fingertips of his 5 fingers and the center of his palm, it split into 6 scorching energy auras and poured into Leng Bingshuang's body. The 6 energies quickly spread to the various meridians in Leng Bingshuang's body. From small to large, at an extremely fast speed, they expelled the cold yin energy that was distributed throughout her body. Finally, it was her internal organs. The entire process of expelling the cold yin energy lasted for a full 4 hours. During the entire process, not only did he have to consider the strength of the distribution of the cold yin energy, he also had to consider the condition of Leng Bingshuang's body. After all, the latter still had injuries on her body. Even with the recovery of a level 5 medicinal pill, if he was not careful, there was still the possibility of leaving behind injuries. In addition, because Leng Bingshuang's attribute was also ice, when expelling the cold yin energy, Xiao Yan had to be even more careful. Otherwise, it was possible that Leng Bingshuang's body would be injured. If her cultivation was affected, even if the latter could recover, she would hate him to the bones. After that, it was time for the extreme Arctic ice soul. The extreme Arctic ice soul itself contained an extremely dense cold yin energy. If the cold yin energy was used properly, it would naturally become a miraculous elixir that could help raise one's cultivation. However, if it was not controlled, or if it was consumed in excess, then it would very likely become a lethal weapon. Leng Bingshuang had obviously consumed too much of it. With her current cultivation, it was impossible for her to completely refine it. The only way now was to disperse the cold yin energy contained in the extreme Arctic ice soul as much as possible, then use the heavenly flame to slowly refine it. As for this process, it was likely to be extremely long. However, for Xiao Yan, this was undoubtedly the safest way. Thinking of doing it, with Leng Bingshuang's current situation, there was not much of a choice. Subsequently, Xiao Yan withdrew his palm. At the same time, the cold yin energy that was sealed in Leng Bingshuang's body was once again released. Waves of strong cold yin energy rapidly spread out, and the little color that had recovered on Leng Bingshuang's pretty face also quickly faded. Subsequently, Xiao Yan stretched out his hands and placed them flat on Leng Bingshuang's lower abdomen and below her neck. Waves of blazing energy were released from his palms and surged into Leng Bingshuang's body, beginning to refine the cold yin energy that was trying to continue spreading. He wanted to use a long period of time to completely exhaust the cold yin energy in the extreme Arctic ice soul. However, this time, just as Xiao Yan was preparing to refine the cold yin energy, a strange suction force suddenly surged out from the vortex in Leng Bingshuang's body. At the same time, the cold yin energy that was spreading out from the extreme Arctic ice soul suddenly seemed to be attracted by something, and uncontrollably rushed towards the center of the vortex in Leng Bingshuang's body. Almost at the same time, Leng Bingshuang's delicate body also rapidly cooled down. Her originally white skin looked even more sparkling at this moment. Sensing this, Xiao Yan hurriedly withdrew his hands. Lowering his head to look at his 2 icy cold palms, he suddenly felt a wave of shock in his heart. Immediately, Xiao Yan lifted his eyes and saw waves of extremely cold yin energy spreading out from Leng Bingshuang's body. The energy within the extreme Arctic ice soul was also rapidly being absorbed. Strange icy blue lines also surfaced on Leng Bingshuang's arms. The moment Xiao Yan saw those lines, the expression on his face suddenly changed. This is Extreme Yin Body. Chapter 1076. The extreme yin body was similar to the woeful poison body. It was a special body constitution that was extremely rare in the world. Its attribute was on the cold side, and once it was activated, it could trigger the power of heaven and earth. It was said that wherever the extreme Yin body appeared, heaven and earth would be frozen, and everything within 10,000 miles would be white. However, wherever the extreme Yin body went, heaven and earth would also be frozen. Winter snow would dance everywhere, and the world would become a white purgatory. Without mentioning anything else, just the fact that it was equally famous as the woeful poison body was enough to cause countless people to be alarmed. The situation that Leng Bingshuang was currently displaying was exactly the same as the description of the extreme Yin body in the legends. Damn it, why does this woman have such a ghostly physique? Xiao Yan's expression became a little ugly when he saw the extreme cold ice soul within Leng Bingshuang's body being swallowed by the latter at an extremely fast speed. He would not believe that the extreme Yin body was comparable to the woeful poison body if it did not have some terrifying aspects. However, the problem was that this woman seemed to be about to wake up. Buzz! The instant Xiao Yan's exclamation sounded, Leng Bingshuang's originally tightly shut beautiful eyes suddenly opened at this moment. At the same time, her ice-cold delicate body also suddenly stood up. An extremely icy aura also swept out at the same time. The icy aura instantly caused the temperature within the cave to drop. Even the magma that was continuously churning a moment ago also involuntarily calmed down, as if it had been frozen. At the same time, Xiao Yan hurriedly raised his head and looked. His heart immediately turned cold. Indeed, Leng Bingshuang's pair of beautiful eyes were completely pale at this moment. There was not the slightest bit of spirit in them. The indifferent expression on her pretty face was extremely cold. The most frightening thing was that this woman was currently staring intently at Xiao Yan, as if she wanted to kill the latter for his disrespectful actions earlier. Sensing the killing intent in Leng Bingshuang's ice-cold eyes, Xiao Yan felt a chill down his spine. At the same time, Leng Bingshuang's delicate body trembled. In the blink of an eye, she had already appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Without any hesitation, she raised her jade-like hand and an extremely cold ice instantly covered her slender palm. Then, she viciously slapped Xiao Yan's face. This woman, what a terrifying reading speed. Xiao Yan had always known the horror of Leng Bingshuang, but it was not until this moment that he truly felt the tyrannical strength of the other party after witnessing the latter's terrifying speed. Fortunately, this guy did not have any strange means, otherwise, Xiao Yan would really have a hard time dealing with him. At the same time as his expression changed, Xiao Yan's figure also rapidly retreated. His feet stomped heavily on the ground, and his body leaned back slightly. Only then did he manage to narrowly avoid Leng Bingshuang's slap. Hiss! Although he dodged Leng Bingshuang's jade-like hand, the extremely cold wind still left a few shallow bloodstains on Xiao Yan's face. Then, without waiting for Xiao Yan to stabilize his body, Leng Bingshuang actually followed up and slapped Xiao Yan's abdomen. Although Xiao Yan still managed to dodge this blow with his extraordinary speed, the jade-like hand still slipped through Xiao Yan's crotch. The cold wind immediately caused Xiao Yan's lower body to tighten and his scalp to go numb. After that, in the face of Leng Bingshuang's attack, Xiao Yan did not dare to slack off in the slightest. He was afraid that this crazy woman would do something terrible with her slap. In the face of the latter's endless attacks, Xiao Yan continuously attacked and received all of Leng Bingshuang's attacks. After that, Leng Bingshuang even released the Great Tao of Frost. 20 ice mirrors were released at the same time, surrounding Xiao Yan from all directions. Waves of sharp energy wind constantly rushed towards Xiao Yan. If not for the Great Tao of Void, even Xiao Yan would have suffered quite a bit of damage from it. With the flow of time, Xiao Yan was shocked to discover that the cave under the volcano had unknowingly been completely sealed by ice. This was not only limited to the four walls of the cave but also the originally churning magma. The hot fire glow had long since disappeared. Instead, it was a kind of dark coal-like black color. The entire surface of the magma had basically been completely cooled. Moreover, with the increasing thickness of the cold ice that covered the cave, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have nowhere to retreat if this continued. At that time, he would really be in trouble. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. The manifestation of Leng Bingshuang's extreme yin had now erupted. Although the energy contained in the extreme cold ice soul was no longer a concern, the current Leng Bingshuang was even more dangerous than before. Even Xiao Yan himself could not avoid being surrounded by danger. If he wanted to resolve all this danger, he had to stop Leng Bingshuang at this moment. But, thinking of a certain point in his heart, Xiao Yan could not help but hesitate. That kind of result was probably not something that he could bear. Or perhaps it was not something that Leng Bingshuang could bear. According to the records in the ancient books that Xiao Yan had read in the past, since ancient times, the appearance of the extreme yin body was extremely rare. Moreover, every time it appeared, it was in the female group. This might be due to the innate coldness of the female body. However, regardless of which aspect one looked at, the strength of the extreme yin body was obvious to all. However, since ancient times, there had never been any method to control the special constitution of the extreme yin body. It should be known that even if it was a terrifying woeful poison body, the ancient books more or less had some methods to deal with it. However, the extreme yin body was something that no one in the world could do anything about. Of course, this did not mean that there was no method to deal with it just because the ancient books did not have it. Xiao Yan once remembered that when he had mentioned this matter to Yao Lao back then, Yao Lao had once said that the essence of the extreme yin body was caused by the excessive yin and cold force. It was also divided into innate and acquired. An innate body was innate to the yin and cold force, but its constitution would have an incubation period. It could be a few years or it could be a lifetime. As for an acquired body, it was caused by the accumulation of yin and cold force over a long period of time. Once an acquired extreme yin body was formed, there would no longer be any method to make up for it. However, Yao Lao had personally refuted this definite answer. Since the extreme yin body was caused by the overabundance of dark and cold energy, as long as a person with an extremely strong and fierce physique copulated with it, logically speaking, there would be a high chance of success. Of course, since ancient times, there was no lack of people who attempted to do so. Unfortunately, forget about copulation, it was extremely difficult for an ordinary expert to even approach a person with an extreme yin body. Even if they were able to forcefully approach, most of them would be unable to endure due to the overabundance of dark and cold energy surrounding the latter's body. After which, they would be ruthlessly killed by a person with an extreme yin body. However, Xiao Yan was an exception amongst all of this. After hesitating for quite a while, Xiao Yan returned to his senses. He discovered that there was only a few dozen meters of space between him and Leng Bingshuang. At the same time, Leng Bingshuang had completely absorbed the extreme chilling ice soul. The presence she gave off was actually terrifyingly powerful. She was only a step away from returnance. If he could not control her now, it would really be too late. God damn it. I promise you that I will take responsibility for you until the end. Xiao Yan quietly cursed in his heart. In the end, he clenched his teeth in a vicious manner. A thought passed through his mind and the three-elephant skill was instantly displayed. At the same time, a fierce flame instantly wrapped around his body. After which, he firmly grabbed Leng Bingshuang's hand, which was once again attacking him, in his palm. At the same time, his other hand violently waved. An invisible force instantly tore apart the icy blue long dress that was wrapped around Leng Bingshuang's lovely body. Chapter 1077. Bang! Following a muffled explosion, ice fragments flew in all directions and the entire cave trembled. The aftermath of the explosion reverberated endlessly within the cave, causing waves of buzzing sounds to reverberate within the cave. A human figure flashed in the depths of the cave, continuously easily dodging the icicles that were attacking him. At the same time, the thick layer of ice that filled the entire cave also began to gradually peel off. The magma that was sealed under the ice also gradually regained some vitality at this moment. Die. Within the cave, only a delicate cry that was filled with killing intent was heard. Several icicles that were filled with a piercing chill once again shot forward, ruthlessly piercing towards the black-robed young man. In response to this, the black-robed young man merely twisted his body and easily dodged all of them. Soon after, the icicles once again broke apart the thick layer of ice behind him. Seeing that her attack was actually dodged so easily, the woman's exhausted pretty face once again revealed an expression of shame and anger. Dragging her tired delicate body, she took a step forward with her pair of stunningly beautiful legs in pain and charged towards the black-robed young man. However, immediately after, the woman's delicate body suddenly went limp and she powerlessly fell to the ground. However, the black-robed man's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. His body suddenly flashed and he instantly appeared in front of the woman. Both of his hands extended and once again landed on the woman's smooth delicate body. At the same time, he supported her up. "Let go of this king." The roar that was filled with rage was somewhat hoarse. A pair of ice-blue beautiful eyes were completely red at this moment. With a twist of her jade-like hand, an icicle immediately condensed in her palm and ruthlessly pierced towards the chest of the black-robed young man in front of her. Crack! However, the instant the icicle pierced through the black robe and made contact with the black-robed young man's chest, it was as if it had struck an iron wall and instantly shattered. The woman's slender and delicate hand instead landed on the black-robed young man's warm chest as if she was caressing it. The sudden icy cold feeling caused the heart of the black-robed young man to suddenly tighten. His hands, which were supporting the woman, subconsciously withdrew. The woman's soft and delicate body immediately pressed tightly against the black-robed young man's chest. The exquisite skin and softness to the touch caused the black-robed young man's entire body to tremble. Even though he had already understood the gentleness and beauty of this delicate body, touching it once again at this moment caused the impression in his heart to deepen. Almost at the same time, the pretty nose of the woman in his embrace could not help but let out a lovely snort. The warm breath exhaled from her pretty nose caused the heart of the black-robed young man to surge. Hiss! In the next moment, the woman actually used what little strength she had left to open her alluring lips and fiercely bite the man's chest. As if he was afraid of hurting the woman in his arms, the black-robed young man did not use any strength from the beginning to the end. He allowed the boiling blood to stick to the woman's red lips, making her look even more alluring. The black-robed young man, on the other hand, gritted his teeth and persisted. "Xiao Yan, when I recover, I will definitely kill you." Suddenly, the tears in the beautiful eyes of the woman in his embrace finally gushed out unwillingly. The tears dripped onto Xiao Yan's chest. The trace of coldness and the strange itchiness when the tears fell did not make Xiao Yan let go of the woman in his embrace. Instead, he wrapped his arms behind him and hugged the woman's delicate body even more tightly into his embrace. "I'm sorry, in that situation, if I didn't do anything, then your extreme body would very likely completely erupt. At that time, no one would be able to suppress it. You don't need to care about that, I just want to save you. You're not worthy." The woman in his embrace shouted out these three hoarse words with shame and indignation, and Xiao Yan also became silent because of this. "Then what do you think I should do to be worthy?" After being silent for a long while, Xiao Yan suddenly lowered his head and clenched his teeth. A pale blue flame rose in the depths of his pair of pitch-black eyes. He stared intently at the soft woman in his embrace, and there was a domineering and gentle anger in his eyes. When Leng Bingshuang heard Xiao Yan's words, her entire person was suddenly stunned. Especially when she noticed Xiao Yan's eyes, the bottom of her heart could not help but tremble. Her red lips that were stained with blood opened slightly, but she did not spit out a word. Instead, a faint fishy sweet taste entered her mouth. Ugh! Immediately, under Leng Bingshuang's shocked gaze, Xiao Yan suddenly lowered his head and sucked on the former's delicate red lips. Ignoring the other party's struggle, he forcefully kissed her. It was a long while later that Xiao Yan finally separated from the former. His fierce gaze was still staring at Leng Bingshuang in his embrace. The domineering gaze actually caused Leng Bingshuang's heart to jump wildly, and the thoughts in her mind had yet to recover from the shocking kiss just now. Huff, Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air. After which, when the woman in his embrace recovered, he once again opened his mouth and said in a deep voice, "If you think that only a man who is stronger than you is qualified to be your husband, then I will use my strength to conquer you now." After saying those words, the man did not wait for Leng Bingshuang to open her mouth to argue. The man's body directly pushed the woman in his embrace down. Under the latter's sharp exclamation, the man overbearingly and mercilessly tore apart the long dress that the woman was wearing again. In the next moment, the interior of the cave was overflowing with spring. The two of them only left the bottom of the volcano at noon the next day with different expressions. When the two of them appeared in the outside world, the little fairy doctor and the rest, who were led by the northern king, had already arrived. They were waiting for Xiao Yan to appear. Xiao Yan's appearance naturally attracted the attention of the group of elite Dodi. Immediately, the group respectfully bowed to Xiao Yan. "Chief." A voice that was filled with an imposing aura reverberated unceasingly within this mountain range. Xiao Yan nodded his head with a solemn expression when he heard this. Tianing and the others by the side had already recovered by half with the help of Xiao Yan's Tier 5 medicinal pills. Although their auras were still weak, they were able to move on their own. When they discovered this group of people, they had nearly thought that Qin Shuo's group had come to attack again. It was only at this moment that they saw the attitude of this group of people toward Xiao Yan. Only then did they understand in their hearts that this group of people was actually the experts that Xiao Yan had brought with him. At the same time that they understood this point, the few of them involuntarily felt a shock in their hearts. After not seeing each other for a couple of years, it was unexpected that the Xiao Yan in front of them was far from the Xiao Yan that they knew back then. Not only was his cultivation frighteningly powerful, but he also possessed his own faction. It was really a case of a scholar being looked at in a different light after 3 days apart. However, while most of the people's gazes were gathered on Xiao Yan suddenly discovered that the little fairy doctor's eyes had unknowingly made contact with Leng Bingshuang, whose pretty face was indifferent. Immediately, a bad premonition swiftly rose within Xiao Yan's heart. Chapter 1078. In the depths of the Shilin mountain range, Xiao Yan's figure stood proudly on a mountain peak. Beside him was the alluring Leng Bingshuang. Her delicate face was expressionless, but there were traces of resentment in her eyes as she glanced at the black-robed young man beside her from time to time. The little fairy doctor and the rest were also silently standing in front of Xiao Yan. Several dozen gazes landed on Xiao Yan's body in unison, their eyes filled with respect. After witnessing the terrifying speed Xiao Yan had displayed that day, the black-robed young man's weight in their hearts had abruptly increased. His speed was far too frightening. In fact, it was much faster than the northern king they had seen before. It was very difficult to imagine that he was only an intermediate origin transformation stage expert. It was no wonder that he had been able to kill Qin Su. Without sufficient strength, it would be very difficult for an ordinary person to accomplish such a feat. Subsequently, Xiao Yan entrusted Tianing to lead the 30-plus Dodi experts into his cave dwelling to rest. With Xiao Yan leading the way, Tianing was naturally much more courteous to these people. The group quickly left, leaving behind only Xiao Yan, Leng Bingshuang, and 3 others. The other 2 were naturally the little fairy doctor and Kai Er. Ever since Kai Er started following the little fairy doctor, although she rarely spoke, her every action was in accordance with the little fairy doctor's thoughts. In just a few short months, the tacit understanding between the two of them had increased to an extremely terrifying level. Kai could naturally sense the strange atmosphere between the little fairy doctor and Leng Bingshuang. Her expression immediately darkened as she stared at Leng Bingshuang with hostility surging from the depths of her eyes. At the same time, the powerful Genesis Qi in her body began to circulate. Xiao Yan suddenly extended his hand just as Kai Er was about to flare up. He grabbed Kai Er's wrist, and the latter immediately recovered. Her respectful eyes immediately looked at Xiao Yan in front of her. A respectful expression surfaced in her pretty eyes. "Master," Kai lowered her head and timidly called out. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan frowned and nodded. Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Kai, your current cultivation isn't any weaker than mine, but your temperament is still shallow, so I can't teach you too much. I can only tell you that people live for themselves. Before you do anything, you have to think clearly about the purpose of doing it, and why you are doing it. People can't always be immersed in the past, you still have a long way to go in the future. I don't want you to be depressed like this, and your brother also doesn't want you to become like this." Big brother. Upon hearing Xiao Yan's words, Kai's eyes immediately brightened. A familiar figure appeared in her mind's mind. But, although the latter had already passed, her brothers chose to her. To time, of course. It was a long while later before a layer of faint fog suddenly surged into Kai's lifeless eyes. After which, she spoke to Xiao Yan before leaving on her own. Xiao Yan also watched Kai's back as she left. Only a moment later did he recover. His expression was complicated as he looked at the two people in front of him. Now that Kai's matter was barely resolved, the matter between the two women in front of him was really difficult to deal with. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. He had saved the fire of others, but it was difficult to settle the trouble he had caused. At this moment, the two women were staring at each other with their beautiful, sparkling eyes. The invisible confrontation caused the atmosphere in the air to become more and more anxious. This was a war without smoke. There was no wind and no waves, but it was like a stormy sea. Xiao Yan couldn't help but sigh bitterly in his heart. Xiao Yan repeatedly sighed in his heart. It was a long while later before he gathered his courage and took a step between the two of them, blocking their line of sight. However, just as Xiao Yan thought that this would be able to end this battle, the originally calm two people actually lifted their hands in a ghost-like manner as though they had agreed beforehand. In front of Xiao Yan's shocked and terrified gaze, the two of them, both palms rang out, and the clear and loud sound of a slap reverberated on the mountain peak. Xiao Yan's face instantly became distorted. His eyes widened, and there was a look of disbelief. The inexplicable attack caused Xiao Yan to be stunned. He actually couldn't recover for a long time. No matter what, he didn't expect that the two women would actually attack him in such a strange manner. Moreover, the speed and viciousness of the attack seemed to have been rehearsed countless times. It must be said that the tacit understanding between women was really so strange that it was frightening. After which, the two women once again became quiet. After exchanging glances with each other, they prepared to leave. It was also at this moment that a human figure did indeed fly over at an extremely fast speed from the distant mountain range. At the same time, the gazes of the three people on the mountain peak were also attracted over at the same time. Within a short couple of minutes, that human figure appeared in front of Xiao Yan's group. The person who had come was a middle-aged man. His cultivation was that of an intermediate 7-star Daoist. He was wearing a yellow robe, and there was a special badge on his chest that had the word Gu carved on it. This was the symbol of the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. This person was someone from the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. Killing intent immediately flashed across Leng Bingshuang's pretty face the moment she recognized this person. Xiao Yan stopped Leng Bingshuang, who was about to attack. Although the killing intent in the latter's heart did not diminish, for some unknown reason, it actually retreated. Although she was filled with hatred towards the person who had taken her body, she ultimately couldn't bring herself to kill him. Killing intent had just risen in her heart when it mysteriously dissipated. In fact, when facing Xiao Yan, she actually lost control of the Genesis Qi in her body. As for the little fairy doctor, she didn't know the identity of the person who had come and naturally couldn't feel any enmity. Moreover, given her current cultivation level, she couldn't do anything even if she had any enmity. As for the person who had come, he seemed to already have a target. He wasn't here for the master of the Shilin mountain range, Leng Bingshuang. Instead, he was here for the young man in black robes at the front of the trio. The yellow-robed person stood 100 feet away from the trio. He didn't say anything and instead shot a jade strip at Xiao Yan from afar. When he confirmed that the jade strip had landed in Xiao Yan's hands, he turned around and fled without any hesitation. Die. However, the moment the yellow-robed person turned around, Leng Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, suddenly attacked. She threw a palm through the air. Carrying the suppressed fury in her heart, she instantly killed the yellow-robed person. Xiao Yan involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva when he saw this scene. A chill appeared on his back. Chapter 1079. On the cliff, Xiao Yan involuntarily shrunk his neck when he saw Leng Bingshuang slap the yellow-robed man to death. Subsequently, he hurriedly picked up the jade strip in his hand when Leng Bingshuang shot a cold glare at him. Soon after, Xiao Yan injected a sliver of energy into the jade strip. The information contained within the jade strip appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the other two. What appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the other two was an image. The figures in the image were Qin Shuo and Yi Luo Tian, who had fled not long ago. When they saw the two of them, Xiao Yan and Leng Bingshuang's expressions immediately darkened. When the little fairy doctor saw this, a trace of enmity also flashed across her pretty face. Just from the image alone, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that the injuries on the two of them seemed to have recovered significantly. It was likely that they had used quite a number of high-tier medicinal pills. The purpose of this image was likely to create a certain amount of psychological pressure on Xiao Yan. Unfortunately, these things were completely useless against Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, I truly did not expect that you have actually grown to such an extent in just a few short years. This is truly astonishing. In the image, Yi Luo Tian revealed a sinister smile. His venomous eyes seemed to really be waiting for Xiao Yan. Even though this gaze did not contain any substance, it still caused one's heart to tighten. It was as if there was an invisible blade at one's throat. In response, Xiao Yan and the other two directly ignored this. They were not afraid of this invisible threat at all. Soon after, the silk-robed Qin Shuo in the image spoke. Xiao Yan and Leng Bingshuang. Good, all of you have finally gathered. Just you wait. 10 days later, it will be the time of your deaths. His gloomy voice was filled with endless killing intent, and his eyes were filled with malevolence. It was as if he had already seen the miserable defeat of Xiao Yan and the others 10 days later. Kik, Xiao Yan, will be waiting for you at Shahipu in 10 days. If you don't come, we'll lead all the forces in the western region and flatten the Shilin mountain range. Let's see where you can hide then. At the end of the video, Yi Luo Tian once again let out a sinister laugh, while icy killing intent involuntarily flashed across the faces of Xiao Yan and the rest. This fellow was completely using the entire Shilin mountain range as a wager to threaten them. Boom! When the image in front of him ended, Xiao Yan randomly crushed the jade token in his hand. After which, he slowly raised his head. His gaze looked at the distant sky. The corner of his mouth was lifted into an arc as he coldly said, "You are right." The corners of his mouth curled up as he coldly said, "Yi Luo Tian, Ghost Hall, send out the order. 10 days later, we'll meet Shahipu." Xiao Yan immediately turned around after his words sounded. However, the smile on his face suddenly stiffened in the next moment. He saw that the two women behind him were staring at him with icy cold eyes without moving. Those icy cold eyes caused one's heart to feel a chill. Naturally, there was no one to convey the order from his mouth. Ugh, Xiao Yan was stunned. His heart immediately felt a little stupefied. He opened his mouth, but was unable to spit out a single word. His entire body was rooted to the ground like a piece of wood. It was a long while later before the two women in front of him snorted coldly, turned around and left. Only then did Xiao Yan's suspended heart finally relax. A couple of hours later, Xiao Yan and the upper echelons of Xiao Gate were seated within Sky Eagle's cave. At this moment, everyone's expressions were simultaneously grave. After being informed by the little fairy doctor, they were already aware of the battle with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley 10 days later. Currently, they were most worried about the true strength of the other party. The Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was an old faction in the Western region and was once known as the Overlord of the Western region. Its foundation was naturally not to be underestimated. Yi Luotian had gathered the 4 great sects and naturally had quite a number of experts under him. If these two joined hands, their strength would be enough to sweep through the entire Western region. Based on Sky Eagle's understanding of these two, there were likely over 50 elite Do Di under the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. The number of Ban Di experts was even more difficult to estimate. Just this point alone was something that the current Xiao Gate could not compare with. However, if that was all, it would be fine. After all, just the number of origin transformation experts on the Xiao sect side, including Leng Bingshuang, amounted to 4. They had 2 more origin transformation experts than the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley. If this was the case, as long as there were 2 of them remaining, even if there were 50 elite Do Di in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, they would still be able to easily suppress them. After all, the so-called elite Do Di was nothing in front of an origin transformation expert. Unfortunately, just when everyone believed that this battle would not be a problem, Leng Bingshuang's pretty ice-cold face suddenly opened her mouth and revealed the fact that there were still 2 origin transformation experts in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Everyone present was immediately shocked when these words were uttered. Even Xiao Yan's expression changed. Other people might be unaware, but he clearly understood that Yi Luotian had colluded with the Ghost Hall. In the battle 10 days later, the people from the Ghost Hall would definitely head out and attack him. Their goal was to capture him. At that time, it was likely that the Ghost Hall would take out at least 2 origin transformation experts. Originally, Xiao Yan thought that if this was the case, the 4 of them would still be able to fight. However, if the other party still had 2 origin transformation experts, if the other party were to suddenly take out 2 origin transformation experts in a 4-against-4 situation, they would definitely be able to turn the situation around in an instant. At the same time, the people from Xiao Gate's side would definitely be affected. The battle situation would become even more dangerous. The originally disadvantageous situation would only cause them to lose any chance of victory. Hence, if Xiao Yan wanted to defeat the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, the only method was to find other helpers. However, there were only a few origin transformation experts in the entire Western region. Where would he find any helpers? However, just when Xiao Yan was feeling slightly anxious, his gaze inadvertently glanced at Tian Ying's group. More accurately, it should be the scaled serpent among them. The moment he saw the latter, Xiao Yan seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His eyes immediately brightened and a glint of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. If he remembered correctly, there might be other origin transformation experts in the Western region. Xiao Yan clearly remembered that he had once sensed the aura of an origin transformation expert in that place. Now that he thought about it, he had been extremely lucky back then. Chapter 1080. Afterwards, under Xiao Yan's lead, Leng Bingshuang and the rest of Tian Ying's group arrived in front of a natural lake. The azure sky, the calm lake, and the endless mountain forest. The natural colors caused this area to appear especially beautiful. In particular, the layer of faint fog that floated on the surface of the lake caused this place to appear like a fairyland. When the group arrived at this place, Leng Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, and Lin Shi, who was among the 5 people from Sky Eagle, immediately recognized this place. This place was the narwhal snake's nest. At the same time, it was also the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins. Why have we come here? I don't think there will be anything at the bottom of the lake. Leng Bingshuang glanced at the lake in front of her doubtfully. She was filled with doubts. She could not sense anything at the bottom of the lake with her aura. Even though there were still some signs of magical beasts, it did not prove that there was anything special about this place. As for the ruins, they had already closed many years ago, so it was even more impossible for her to think of them. Big Brother Xiao, are you thinking of? On the other hand, the scaled snake had once entered the ruins, so he clearly understood how terrifying it was. If he wanted to get help, the fellow inside would be a very good helper. Yes, I want to try and see if I can open the ruins again. If it's possible, I think we should be able to get another origin transformation expert. Xiao Yan grinned when he heard that. He clearly remembered the strength of the aura he had sensed in the desolate ancient ruins. It was an existence that he could not compare to back then. Back then, Xiao Yan had immediately confirmed that the person was an origin transformation expert through Gu Yu's words. As a result, if they could open the desolate ancient ruins again and successfully obtain the help of that person, their group would gain another origin transformation expert. The expressions of the people behind him immediately changed when they heard that. Even Lu Jin, Fang Tonghui, and the others revealed expressions of disbelief. Even the little fairy doctor and Kai revealed surprise on their faces. On the other hand, Leng Bingshuang frowned and coldly said, "Are you crazy? Usually, the seals of ancient ruins are special. It is impossible for outsiders to open them. If you forcefully open them, you will only be injured by the backlash of the energy contained within the seal. Even if you can barely open them, how confident are you in being able to enter and exit as you please?" Everyone present turned their gazes to Leng Bingshuang in the face of this sudden cold cry. After which, they swept their gazes back and forth between Xiao Yan and the two of them. Their hearts were stunned. This was especially the case when everyone saw the smile on the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth. A vague guess rose in their hearts. A bright redness immediately flashed across Leng Bingshuang's pretty face when she sensed everyone's gazes shooting over. Shock surged in the eyes of Tian Ying's group when they saw this. Immediately, the few of them quietly exchanged glances with each other before they immediately quietened down. Amongst everyone, only the little fairy doctor remained unmoved. However, her pair of eyes, which flickered with a complicated expression, continued to stare intently at Xiao Yan. She did not let him off even for a moment. "Are you concerned about me?" At this moment, Xiao Yan's mouth suddenly uttered such words. Immediately, an invisible storm exploded in the minds of Tian Ying's group. The few of them looked at each other in shock. After which, their eyes instantly turned to Leng Bingshuang. The result was as they had expected in their hearts. It was unusually abnormal. If it was according to Leng Bingshuang's character in the past, it was likely that someone would have been slapped by her if he dared to joke with her in such a manner. However, today, not only was Leng Bingshuang not angered after Xiao Yan spoke these words, her pretty face turned slightly red as she turned her head and ignored the former. This scene was really hard for them not to think about. On the other hand, Lu Jin's group smiled as they looked at Xiao Yan. After which, Xiao Yan ceased joking. He turned around and his gaze landed on the lake in front of him. Honestly speaking, even he did not have any confidence in being able to open the desolate ancient remains. After all, even with his spiritual strength, he could only sense the existence of the remains. As for opening it, that was even more unimaginable. However, the harder it was to imagine, the more Xiao Yan wanted to personally try. After all, no matter what it was, if one did not try, one would never know if one was able to do it. Seeing that Xiao Yan was about to make a move, a look of hesitation flashed across the scaled serpent's face. It opened its mouth, but the words that were about to come out of its mouth were swallowed back. At the same time, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind. The surging spiritual strength between his brows immediately surged out. The vast and mighty spiritual strength was just like a tsunami as it swept over the entire place. The faces of everyone behind him instantly revealed shocked expressions. Such a frightening spiritual strength was really unimaginable. Soon after, the vast and mighty spiritual strength agglomerated into two invisible large hands under Xiao Yan's control. They forcefully tore apart the lake in front of him. the lake water tumbled. Under the surface of the lake, a faintly discernible force began to resist the two invisible hands. From time to time, they collided with each other, causing the tumbling lake water to explode violently. Before the lake water could fall, it was swept away by an invisible wave of energy, rushing towards the people outside the lake. In response, Leng Bingshuang just casually waved her hand, and the water droplets and invisible waves dissipated. As the two invisible hands clashed with the invisible energy under the lake, the crowd was finally able to see the outside of the restriction. A scarlet-red energy barrier stretched across the lake's surface. From a distance, one could see a huge scarlet-red energy halo. It was the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins. Seeing this scene, everyone behind him had a surprised expression on their faces. Before this scene appeared, they had not sensed any strange aura in this place at all. In front of the crowd, Leng Bingshuang frowned as she watched the entrance to the ruins slowly appear. Her heart involuntarily tightened, and the Genesis Qi in her body quietly began to circulate. As Xiao Yan's spiritual strength continued to attack, the entrance to the desolate ancient ruins became increasingly clear in front of everyone's eyes. Even so, no matter how hard Xiao Yan tried, the entrance showed no signs of opening. Not even the tiniest crack appeared. "Damn it!" Xiao Yan quietly said in his heart. He poured his spiritual strength into the two invisible large hands in an even greater frenzy. A moment later, threads of cold sweat surfaced on his forehead. An hour later, when Xiao Yan had poured all of his remaining spiritual strength into the two giant hands, a scarlet-red blood arrow suddenly shot out from the entrance that had not changed at all. It swept past the two invisible hands and viciously pierced towards Xiao Yan. It was at this moment that Leng Bingshuang's figure suddenly flashed. In the blink of an eye, she was already in front of Xiao Yan, trying to block the blood arrow. Chapter 1081. The blood arrow that was about to devour a person pierced through the air, carrying a sharp ghost-like howl as it broke through the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had already appeared a few feet in front of Xiao Yan. In the next moment, it would pierce through Xiao Yan's chest. At this moment, a figure wearing a blue dress suddenly flashed in front of Xiao Yan. She actually took the lead to appear in front of Xiao Yan, facing Xiao Yan. At the same time, an extremely cold ice mirror also appeared behind Leng Bingshuang. Chi-chi, soon after, a low, chi-chi sound appeared. The scarlet blood arrow trembled and quietly disappeared in midair. Soon after, when everyone's gazes shot over, they were shocked to find that the one who had blocked the blood arrow was not the ice mirror that was formed behind Leng Bingshuang. Instead, it was a young man wearing a similar black robe. From the looks of it, it was actually the scaled snake. The one who had blocked the blood arrow was actually the scaled snake, who was only a 9-star Do-D. Immediately, the faces of everyone present revealed a deep shock. Even Leng Bingshuang, who had recovered, could not help but reveal a shocked expression on her pretty face. Cough cough, when Xiao Yan lifted his head, he saw a pair of proud snow-white peaks in front of him. His entire body was immediately stunned. Immediately, his old face turned red and he could not help but cough twice. Soon after, Leng Bingshuang, who had turned her head to look at the scaled snake, also discovered that something was wrong when she turned her head. Her exquisite pretty face immediately revealed a red blush. Her delicate body was just about to move when she was pulled to the side by Xiao Yan. After which, she hurriedly collected her emotions and turned her gaze to the scaled snake. Seeing that the latter had so easily resolved the blood arrow, even with Xiao Yan's temperament, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. However, he quickly recovered and recalled that back then, the scaled snake had swallowed the inheritance of the desolate ancient ruins. Speaking of which, there was also a portion of the aura of the original owner of the desolate ancient ruins in his body. Perhaps this was the reason why he was able to control it. On the other hand, Leng Bingshuang's jade-like hand, which was tightly held by Xiao Yan, struggled with all her might. However, in the end, she was unable to escape from Xiao Yan's powerful demonic palm. While she felt helpless in her heart, she actually recalled the words that Xiao Yan had said in the cave. Thinking that the person in front of her actually wanted to conquer her in such a domineering manner, Leng Bingshuang's heart was filled with unwillingness but also some inexplicable joy. Sensing this point, the redness of Leng Bingshuang's face, Leng Bingshuang's face, Leng Bingshuang. Sensing Xiao Yan's gaze, the scaled serpent smiled and turned around to face Xiao Yan. He then swept his gaze over everyone behind him before opening his mouth and saying, "Let me give it a try." The scaled snake's gaze once again returned to Xiao Yan's body. Its gaze seemed to be waiting for the latter's agreement. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yan could not help but be stunned. After a slight hesitation, he nodded his head and left with Leng Bingshuang. Subsequently, under the gazes of the crowd, Leng Bingshuang turned its head and stared at the lake in front of it. A scarlet color gradually surfaced in its pair of black eyes. Following the appearance of that light, the lake, which had just regained its calm, once again surged. Ripples of water retreated to both sides as the scarlet-red entrance to the ruins appeared in front of the crowd's eyes. This time, it was not as strenuous as Xiao Yan had been previously. Instead, it was a calm and unhurried manner. Under the control of Leng Bingshuang, the entrance to the ruins actually gradually opened before the crowd's eyes. Very quickly, the entrance to the ruins had completely appeared before the crowd's eyes. At the same time, waves of scarlet-red blood mist floated out from within. Upon seeing this blood mist once again, Xiao Yan's eyes no longer had the slightest trace of fear. His figure stepped forward and stood beside Leng Bingshuang. The two of them exchanged a look, before turning their heads to speak to the crowd behind them. Immediately, the two of them moved together, flying towards the entrance to the ruins before them. When the two of them arrived before the entrance, Xiao Yan flicked his finger. Light blue flames instantly rose and floated in front of the two of them, dispersing the blood mist that was pouncing towards them. After which, the two of them swiftly disappeared into the entrance of the ruins. Once again arriving at this place, seeing that it still looked the same as before, Xiao Yan could not help but heave a long sigh of relief in his heart. Back then, after they had fought over the inheritance, the entire stone platform had collapsed. Fortunately, the space in the outside world did not seem to be affected by the stone platform. Thus, some of the worries in Xiao Yan's heart could naturally be dispelled. Very quickly, Xiao Yan and Leng Bingshuang appeared before a vast forest. This time, Xiao Yan did not have the slightest bit of hesitation as he directly flew towards the depths of the forest. Relying on his enormous spiritual strength, he quickly found the location of that big fellow from back then. Grinning, Xiao Yan turned his head to look at Leng Bingshuang beside him. Soon after, the two of them moved together. With lightning speed, they rapidly flew towards the depths of the forest. A quarter of an hour later, the two figures stood in the air. In front of them was a huge empty space. In different directions of the empty space, there were 6 huge black stone pillars that were several feet tall. Mysterious runes were inscribed on them, emitting waves of fluorescent light. The foundations of the stone pillars were connected to each other. From afar, it looked like a hexagon. At the center of these 6 stone pillars was a stone platform. From the broken half of a black stone pillar on the stone platform, there should have been a total of 7 stone pillars here. However, the one in the middle had been destroyed for some reason. However, at this moment, Xiao Yan's gaze was not on these 6 stone pillars. Instead, it was on the stone platform in the middle, at the pitch-black cave that looked like the mouth of a well. Relying on his powerful spiritual strength, he could clearly sense that within the cave, there was an existence with an extremely ferocious aura. Of course, as of now, this aura no longer posed any threat to Xiao Yan. What's wrong? After such a long time apart, you don't plan on coming out to meet an old friend? Xiao Yan grinned. His laughter seemed to contain some sort of magic, causing the fellow in the cave who had just heard his voice to immediately open a pair of scarlet eyes. Bang! A terrifying force viciously slammed against the stone platform, causing the surrounding forest to violently tremble. A berserk roar rang out from the cave below the stone platform, shaking the heavens and the earth. Late origin transformation stage. Quick! Help me destroy these 7 seals. Chapter 1082. Yes, the late stage of the origin transformation realm. When Xiao Yan had intercourse with Leng Bingshuang earlier, he had coincidentally broken through to the late stage of the origin transformation realm due to the remnant energy of the extreme cold ice soul in his body. Leng Bingshuang was currently at the peak of the late stage of the origin transformation realm. She was only a step away from returnance. However, the moment the enormous ape in the cave sensed Xiao Yan's aura, its mind seemed to have suddenly recalled something. It's you. The human kid who spied on me back then. His scarlet eyes were filled with shock. It had only been a few years, but the kid in front of him had already grown to such an extent. This was truly shocking. Hee, looks like you still remember me. Xiao Yan smiled faintly when he heard that. His smile contained some craftiness. How is this possible? How did your cultivation increase so quickly? The ape became even more shocked when he saw Xiao Yan admit it with a smile. It had only been a few short years, so how could he have imagined that the half-step emperor from back then had already become an origin transformation realm expert? Xiao Yan merely parted his mouth and smiled in response to this. The scaled snake by his side also laughed softly. His face was filled with ridicule. Let's cut to the chase. I've come to find you this time to take you away from here. Xiao Yan wrapped his arms around his chest. He curled his mouth and looked at the entrance of the cave below. When the latter heard this, the shock that had shrouded his heart a moment ago immediately disappeared. Instead, his heart was filled with excitement and wild joy. He had been sealed in this place for an unknown number of years. Now, he finally had the opportunity to leave. Kid, no, why, is what you said true? You're willing to undo the seal for me and leave here? Xiao Yan's words caused the enormous ape to address Xiao Yan in a much more solemn manner. One could clearly hear an excitement that could not be suppressed in its voice. Its scarlet beast eyes blocked the exit of the cave. It appeared that it wanted to see Xiao Yan, who was in the air, clearly. Of course, or I wouldn't have come here again. It's just that, at this moment, the words in Xiao Yan's mouth paused. The heart of the towering sky ape immediately turned cold. As expected, you're willing to take the risk to save me. If you don't have any other intentions, it really is hard to believe. In the blink of an eye, the ape calmed down once again and sneered. Of course, even with that being the case, Xiao Yan could still sense the eagerness in the ape's voice. He had been sealed here for far too long. If there was a chance for him to leave, the ape would not give up so easily. Now that the chance was right in front of him, how could he remain calm? I can save you, but I need you to do something for me. Xiao Yan smiled and spoke faintly. What? Join my organization. Humph. I've never been bound by anyone. You want me to join your organization? Dream on. The ape coldly snorted and ignored Xiao Yan. When the latter heard this, a glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. Soon after, he pretended to helplessly shrug his shoulders and said, All right, I won't force you. Since you're not willing to join, we'll treat it as if we were never here. Goodbye, oh no, never again. After speaking, Xiao Yan turned around and left with the scaled serpent. The latter was somewhat unwilling as it hurriedly turned its head to look at Xiao Yan, only to discover the trace of a smile on the former's lips. The scaled serpent immediately understood and laughed mockingly in its heart. Soon after, it turned around and the two of them flew out of the mountain forest without any hesitation. In the same spot, the giant ape in the cave was filled with hesitation. He did not believe that Xiao Yan would be able to so easily turn around and leave after entering the desolate ancient ruins again. However, when he clearly sensed that Xiao Yan's and the scaled serpent's auras were getting further and further away from him, and were even about to leave this mountain forest, the urgency in his heart finally caused him to open his mouth. "Wait a moment, you've won." His unwilling voice echoed in the mountain forest. In the distant sky, when Xiao Yan and the scaled serpent heard these words, a satisfied smile appeared on their faces. Soon after, they turned around and returned to their original spot in a short few minutes. Their faces were filled with mockery as their gazes once again landed on the cave below. "Humph, you've won. Now you can let me out." The giant ape hatefully snorted, a trace of resentment in its voice. "Hee, how can you say such words? I saved you and you joined me. Both parties are willing and mutually beneficial. It should be a win-win situation for both of us. How can you say that I've won?" Xiao Yan was all smiles as he opened his mouth. The giant ape's mouth twitched as it urged Xiao Yan on. Upon seeing this, Xiao Yan exchanged a look with the scaled serpent beside him. Both of them parted their mouths and smiled. Soon after, Xiao Yan raised his foot and took a step forward. At the same time, the vast and mighty Genesis Qi in his body began to circulate. With a flip of his hand, the pitch-black heavy Xian ruler appeared inch by inch. Next, wave after wave of rich Genesis Qi swirled around it. Next, the giant ruler was swung, hovering above his head as it was viciously swung. 7-layer Heaven Breaker Ruler. 1 foot. 2 feet. 3 feet. 6 feet in succession, a powerful force viciously smashed against the 6 black stone pillars. The powerful force caused the heavens and earth to tremble. Immediately, under the astonished gaze of the scaled serpent behind him, the 6 stone pillars shattered with a loud bang. With the formation broken, the giant ape was also freed. Roar! An earth-shaking beast roar reverberated throughout the mountain forest. Immediately, the various powerful magical beasts in the mountain forest also released earth-shaking roars. They seemed to be responding, but also seemed to be announcing their status in the mountain forest. At this moment, Xiao Yan, who was standing in the air, suddenly frowned. He let out a surprised cry in his heart. His gaze swept over the enormous ape in front of him that had burst out of the ground. A long while later, he asked with a doubtful face. "Why is your cultivation only an 8-star Do-D?" Based on Xiao Yan's investigation, the true cultivation of this fellow in front of him should be at the origin transformation stage. However, for some unknown reason, his current cultivation was only that of an 8-star Do-D despite having escaped from the seal. This kind of strength was not considered much of a help to Xiao Yan. Cough cough, upon hearing this, the giant ape could not help but let out 2 dry coughs. My original cultivation was indeed at the origin transformation stage, but back then, the owner of this broken place placed 2 seals on me. One was to seal my cultivation, while the other was to suppress me here. Although my cultivation has gradually recovered after so many years, there is still a very long way to go before I reach the origin transformation stage. Chapter 1083. Xiao Yan's originally frown immediately deepened when he heard the words of the towering sky ape. In other words, he had painstakingly made this trip in exchange for an 8-star Do-D? Xiao Yan's heart immediately sank when he thought of this. It was very difficult for an elite Do-D to be of any critical use in a battle of this level. If this was merely the case, it was likely that this trip of his would have been in vain. When the towering sky ape noticed that Xiao Yan's face had suddenly become gloomy, its heart involuntarily tightened. It was afraid that this fellow would leave it here because he was unable to achieve his goal. In that case, even if it could leave the cave below, it would still be sealed in this small world that would never see the light of day. Cough cough, actually, my cultivation can be recovered. The towering sky ape coughed dryly twice and hurriedly said. Xiao Yan's face, which had just sunk, immediately revealed a glimmer of hope when he heard this. The eyes that he used to look at the enormous ape in front of him also flickered. How can it be recovered? Through medicinal pills. As it spoke, the towering sky ape extended a finger and pointed it at Xiao Yan from a distance. A ray of light immediately cut through the empty space and landed in Xiao Yan's hand in the blink of an eye. It was a scroll. When Xiao Yan opened the scroll, the first row of words that entered his eyes immediately caused the glimmer of hope that had just risen in his heart to once again dim. Purple Jade Pill, Rank 5 Medicinal Pill. Forget about the use of this medicinal pill. Just the words Rank 5 Medicinal Pill were enough to extinguish this glimmer of hope. Even if Xiao Yan was able to refine a Rank 5 medicinal pill, it would still require a very long time. However, the thing that Xiao Yan lacked the most was time. 10 days later, the big battle between the Xiao Gate and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley would officially begin. There was not much time left for Xiao Yan to begin with. It was even more impossible for him to refine a Rank 5 medicinal pill within 10 days. I can sense that there is the aura of a heavenly flame in your body. If I have guessed correctly, you should be an alchemist. If you are able to refine this purple jade pill, I will completely agree to join your faction. The towering sky ape laughed. It seemed that it was gratified by its own wisdom. Now that it had escaped the seal and had the opportunity to recover its cultivation, it was really a blessing from the heavens. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan only frowned and shook his head in the face of the towering sky ape's words. He returned the scroll in his hand as he helplessly said, "I am sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid it's too late. We only have 10 days left. To refine a level 5 pill in 10 days, I think you should know that it's simply impossible. So, I'm sorry." As his voice faded, Xiao Yan turned around. The scaled snake beside him also sighed in disappointment. The two of them simultaneously turned around and prepared to leave. Immediately after, just as the two of them were about to turn around and leave, the towering sky ape behind them once again spoke out and called out to Xiao Yan. "Wait a moment." Xiao Yan was startled. This time, he was not trying to scare this fellow. However, why did it call out to him? Perhaps, it is not completely impossible. As his voice faded, the towering sky ape's enormous body began to transform. In the blink of an eye, it had transformed into a bare-chested brawny man. If one looked closely, one could clearly see that there was an extremely obvious scar on the brawny man's chin. Hearing the other party's words, Xiao Yan's expression instantly froze. From the other party's tone, could it be that there was another possibility? Subsequently, under the bewildered gazes of Xiao Yan and the scaled snake, the brawny man extended his hand and pointed to the ground below. Only then did the two of them realize that although the towering sky ape had broken out of the seal, the 7 stone platforms that served as the foundation of the 7 completely broken stone pillars were not affected in the slightest. They were still standing in their original positions. As Xiao Yan and the scaled snake looked over, the brawny man opened his mouth again and said, "These 7 formations were left behind by the owner of these ruins. Their purpose was to trap me here. However, with the passage of time and some of my influence, these 7 formations have long changed in the long river of time. The 7 stone pillars are only used to stabilize the formation. Only the 7 stone platforms below are the true weapons used to trap me." These words were not enough to attract Xiao Yan's attention, but the brawny man's following words explained the uniqueness of this formation to Xiao Yan. With the evolution of the stone platforms, the 7 stone platforms contained an extremely large amount of space power, causing a special node to be born somewhere in the space below the 7 stone platforms. At that node, the concept of time was quite ingenious. According to the brawny man, time would become very slow at that node. 1 day inside would be equivalent to 10 days in the outside world. However, although the benefits were great, it was also very difficult to control that node. It was also because of this that the towering sky ape did not use that node to recover its cultivation for such a long time. If Xiao Yan could attempt to control that node and succeed, it would not be impossible for him to refine a violet jade pill within 10 days. Hearing the brawny man's words, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little moved. If what the brawny man said was true, then as long as he could successfully control that node and refine a violet jade pill, his Shao clan would have another origin transformation expert. Although he did not know if he could succeed, now that the formation had been broken, there were no longer any obstructions in the space below the stone platforms. Instead of worrying about other things, he might as well go in and give it a try. After instructing the scaled serpent, Xiao Yan leaped and landed in the cave below. The scaled serpent's gaze landed on the strong man in front of it. Although his words were very moving, the scaled serpent still needed to keep a close eye on the ladder before it could confirm that everything was correct. If there was any problem with Xiao Yan, it would immediately kill this guy on the spot. Although there was only a difference of 1 star between an 8-star Do-D and a 9-star Do-D, the scaled snake was completely confident that he could successfully kill this fellow if he attacked. After Xiao Yan entered the cave, Xiao Yan relied on his enormous spiritual strength to search the pitch-black space. Indeed, there was an extremely special energy node somewhere in this space. This was also what the brawny man had said. Carrying curiosity and caution in his heart, Xiao Yan slowly approached the energy node. When his entire body arrived in front of the node, a certain kind of energy within Xiao Yan's body suddenly and involuntarily agglomerated. This was his Great Way of the Void. Chapter 1084. Xiao Yan felt a surprise in his heart when he sensed the strangeness of the Great Way of the Void. Soon after, he used his spiritual strength to investigate the energy node in front of him. Only then did his heart come to a sudden understanding. At the same time, a wild joy swiftly rose within his heart. The thing that Xiao Yan did not expect was that this so-called energy node did not contain any spatial strength. Instead, it was the strength of the Great Way. Great Tao power that belonged to the Great Tao of the Void. When the Great Tao power in Xiao Yan's body completely condensed in front of him, Xiao Yan was pleasantly surprised to find that the Great Tao power contained in the energy node wasn't inferior to the Great Tao power in his body. In fact, the Great Tao power was even richer. This also meant that if Xiao Yan was able to absorb all of this Great Tao strength, the number of tents that he could form would be at least double of what he currently had. It should be said that the cultivation of Great Tao power was undoubtedly several times more difficult than Battle Qi and Genesis Qi. Even someone as talented as Shui Miao could only condense 1 water curtain in a year. But now, there were equivalent to 10 tents in front of Xiao Yan. How could Xiao Yan miss such a gift from heaven and earth? With a thought, Xiao Yan controlled his own Great Way of the Void and slowly approached the energy node in front of him. Only when the two came into contact with each other and confirmed that the two forces did not cause any conflict did Xiao Yan heave a sigh of relief in his heart. After which, he continued to connect and merge the remaining Great Way strength with it with a nervous heart. In the end, all the Great Tao power in Xiao Yan's body fused with the energy node in front of him, and the energy node's volume also expanded a lot. At the same time, Xiao Yan suddenly had an illusion in his heart the moment the two Great Tao strengths successfully merged. It was as though this originally ownerless energy node had suddenly found an owner. A kind of mysterious connection actually rose between Xiao Yan and this energy node. This kind of connection allowed him to clearly understand all the changes within this energy node as well as the enormous amount of energy it contained. With this thought in mind, Xiao Yan's heart trembled. Although he didn't dare to be completely confident, he still tried to use the connection between him and the energy node to control it. When Xiao Yan saw the large cluster of dark black energy in front of him begin to wiggle, an excited expression involuntarily surged into his dark black eyes. As expected, the control of this energy junction had already landed in Xiao Yan's hands. By relying on the Great Tao strength that belonged to him, Xiao Yan successfully linked the two energies, causing the control of this energy junction to land in Xiao Yan's hands without any surprise. Now, the energy node was completely under Xiao Yan's control. Other than this, after Xiao Yan's subsequent investigation, he had also clearly sensed that it was just as the strong man had said. The concept of time within this ability node was many times slower than the outside world. In other words, if he were to borrow the special effect of this energy node, it would not be a problem for him to refine the purple jade pill within 10 days. This time might even be much shorter than he had expected. At the same time, outside, the scaled serpent and the sky-reaching great ape were also waiting bitterly for Xiao Yan's news. However, the two had different goals. Just as the scaled snake was becoming impatient from waiting and its icy cold gaze landed on the body of the towering sky ape, Xiao Yan's voice suddenly sounded from the interior of the cave below. "Scaled serpent, I've successfully controlled the energy node. I'll have to trouble you for the next few days." Hearing this, the scaled serpent's nervous mood calmed down and it replied. When it looked again at the sky-reaching great ape, it found that the latter's face was filled with joy. This made the scaled serpent immediately vigilant. Then, it directly landed on the ground below and guarded the cave entrance. Its gaze was always on the naked man in midair. The latter was unconcerned about this. At this moment, his focus was completely on Xiao Yan. Or perhaps it could be said that the latter was preparing to refine the purple jade pill. As long as Xiao Yan was able to refine the purple jade pill, his cultivation would be able to recover. At that time, why would he need to be afraid of this triangular-eyed fellow in front of him? In the cave, Xiao Yan's mind moved. Above the energy node, a circle of invisible energy immediately spread out, enveloping Xiao Yan and the small space around him. Immediately, Xiao Yan could clearly feel that within the space that was enveloped by the energy, whether it was the density of the space itself or the speed of the flow of the air, everything changed in an instant. Even Xiao Yan's breathing stopped for a moment. When he breathed again, he was so shocked that he felt as if he had not breathed for a long time. His entire face turned purplish-red in an instant. Soon after 10 minutes, his eyes opened wide in anger. But even so, the deep shock in his eyes did not disappear. After a long while, Xiao Yan sat cross-legged in the dark space with lingering fear. With a flick of his finger, the green-gold Luo Tian cauldron appeared. With the pill formula and a portion of the medicinal ingredients that the heaven-reaching giant ape had given him, in addition to some of Xiao Yan's own reserves, he was barely able to gather 5 sets of medicinal ingredients that could be used to refine medicinal pills. But relatively speaking, this amount was already considered very impressive. After which, Xiao Yan swiftly calmed his heart. Without any hesitation, he opened his mouth and a fierce, heavenly flame immediately spat out, gathering into the medicinal cauldron in front of him. Soon after, with a flick of his finger, the storage ring on his finger continuously flickered. Numerous precious medicinal ingredients, which could be considered priceless treasures in the outside world, flew out like a wisp of smoke. Under the control of Xiao Yan's enormous spiritual strength, they were thrown into the medicinal cauldron in front of him and refined at a surprisingly fast speed. Very quickly, 2 days had passed in the outside world. The scaled snake and the heaven-reaching giant ape were still facing each other from a great distance. Outside of the desolate ancient remains, Leng Bingshuang, the little fairy doctor and the rest were quietly waiting with different emotions. Among the silent crowd, one could tell just how anxious and worried Leng Bingshuang was in her heart when she saw the frown between her eyebrows. Just as everyone was silent, the little fairy doctor, who was originally enjoying the shade under a large tree not far from Leng Bingshuang, suddenly turned her gaze to Leng Bingshuang. After hesitating for a moment, she finally stood up and walked over to Leng Bingshuang. When she came close, Leng Bingshuang's gaze had already met the latter's. The two of them stood face to face. It seemed that both of them had something to say, but neither of them opened their mouths. After being silent for a long while, the little fairy doctor gently opened her mouth. Her pair of beautiful eyes flickered slightly. Only then did she speak with some hesitation, "Can you take a walk with me in the forest? I have some things that I want to talk to you about." Hearing this, Leng Bingshuang's jade-like hand, which was hooking onto a corner of her long skirt, could not help but tremble slightly. In the end, she released the corner of her skirt and nodded her head without saying anything. Immediately, she moved her feet and walked towards the forest in front of the many pairs of surprised gazes behind her. Chapter 1085. Rumble. Within the desolate ancient ruins, the forest was empty. Thunderclouds suddenly churned in the originally calm world. The dark thunderclouds quickly covered the entire sky. In just a short span of a dozen breaths, it caused the light in the world to darken. The rumbling thunder caused the countless magical beasts in the forest below to be alarmed. A portion of the stronger magical beasts raised their heads as excitement and greed appeared in their large eyes. There were even quite a few of them that had already begun to move towards the center of the thunderclouds. Outside the cave, the scaled serpent and the towering giant ape stared in shock at the scene that had suddenly appeared in front of them. However, in the blink of an eye, the two of them regained their senses. Simultaneously, their gazes turned and landed on the cave below. Both of their eyes were filled with shock. This is pill lightning. Doesn't that mean that the violet jade pill has been successfully refined? It's only been 2 days, yet the violet jade pill has already been refined. This formation sure is wondrous. At that moment, joy filled the faces of the scaled snake and the ape, especially the ape. The refinement of the violet jade pill meant that the seal within his body would be removed. At that time, his cultivation would completely return to the origin transformation realm. He believed that at that time, no one in the western region would be his opponent with his cultivation at the origin transformation realm. The heart of the towering sky ape involuntarily rejoiced when he thought of this. At this moment, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly changed. At the same time, quite a number of high-rank magical beasts swiftly rushed over from the distant mountain forest. These beasts had clearly sensed the extraordinariness of the medicinal pill that Xiao Yan had refined and wanted to take the opportunity to compete for it. When they saw this scene, the scaled snake and the towering giant ape involuntarily furrowed their brows. Just as the two of them were about to make a move, a shocking thunderbolt suddenly shot down from the violently churning thunder clouds in the sky. Its target was the cave directly below. As the lightning descended, a terrifying aura immediately pervaded the area. Even from a distance, the powerful energy caused people to feel nervous and uncontrollable. The expressions of the scaled snake and the giant ape instantly changed. The power of the lightning summoned by a Tier 5 medicinal pill was not something they could easily contend against. In addition, the magical beasts in the mountain forest were getting closer and closer to them. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for them. However, in the next moment, just as the lightning above their heads descended and the magical beasts in the mountain forest attacked, a black shadow indeed flashed out from the cave below like a ghost. With an extremely frightening speed, it rushed into the sky in the blink of an eye. Soon after, a fist violently collided with the descending lightning. Boom! An earth-shattering sound instantly spread out, and a terrifying energy storm swept out. The powerful energy storm was like a hurricane that swept across the sky above the sea of trees, toppling the forest. The attacking magical beasts were all blown away by this powerful energy storm. In their original spot, when the scaled snake and the ape raised their heads to look, they saw that the person who had blocked the lightning was actually Xiao Yan. With a punch, the descending lightning was forcibly stopped by Xiao Yan. However, the remaining energy from the lightning still clashed with Xiao Yan. It even climbed onto Xiao Yan's arm and entered his body. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly. With a jerk of his arm, a terrifying power suddenly struck out and shattered the remaining lightning. At the same time, with a thought, the mysterious fire in his body also quickly flowed out at this moment, wrapping around the power of the lightning that had entered his body and began to frantically refine it. The hearts of the scaled serpent and the towering sky giant ape below were greatly shocked when they saw this scene, especially the latter. The terror of the thunderbolt was something that he clearly understood in his heart. Even at his peak, he would not dare to easily face it. However, the current Xiao Yan did not hesitate even a little as he charged forward. Just this point alone was enough to tell just how great Xiao Yan's strength was. Rumble, however, at this moment, just as Xiao Yan shattered the lightning, in the sky above, an even more terrifying lightning suddenly fell again, striking directly at Xiao Yan's head. That kind of momentum was enough to make one's heart tremble. However, the latter's expression did not change. A stern look was revealed in his eyes as his body jerked. Frightening power immediately gathered in his arms as his right hand clenched into a fist and violently swung it. Fist winds howled as an ear-piercing sonic boom echoed across the land. Next, the fist viciously collided with the second lightning bolt. Boom! A frightening energy storm unfurled once again. This time, Xiaoyan's figure was blasted back by the second lightning bolt. His figure fell 100 feet from the sky before stabilizing himself with a frown. Xiaoyan lifted his head to look at the sky. At the same time, he controlled the heavenly flame within his body and wildly refined the lightning strength. He swallowed the waves of strength and his own cultivation also began to vaguely rise as a result. Upon sensing this, Xiaoyan was overjoyed instead of alarmed. He circulated his Genesis Qi to expel the numbness from his arm, before leaping into the air once again to meet the lightning head-on. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The successive bombardment of several dozen lightning bolts caused Xiaoyan's face to turn deathly pale. However, the expression in his eyes grew brighter and brighter, as if he was bursting with energy. The scaled serpent and giant ape below were dumbstruck at the sight of Xiaoyan blocking so many lightning bolts by himself. The muscles on their faces twitched uncontrollably, and they looked at the former as if they were looking at a monster. Ha ha ha. Not bad, as expected of the power of the land. Again. The corner of Xiaoyan's mouth, which was dyed with blood, suddenly parted. A wild and crazy expression was revealed on his face. His eyes arrogantly stared at the thunderclouds in the sky. His body shook and the Genesis Qi within his body once again surged out. Both of his hands were swiftly lifted. His 10 fingers linked together and numerous seals were formed in a ghost-like manner. At the same time, a huge energy finger was swiftly formed in the sky above his head. Desolation finger, go! With a loud roar, the giant energy finger above Xiaoyan's head viciously charged towards the thunderclouds in the sky with a terrifying aura. Rumble! At the same time, the thunderclouds in the sky began to churn again. Thunder boomed, and another bolt of lightning fell. The destructive aura contained within it was several times stronger than before. Rumble! The world shook when the two made contact. The invisible empty space collapsed in an instant. The battleground between Xiaoyan and the thundercloud was completely destroyed. Xiaoyan's body stepped into the endless empty space and faced the pill lightning from a great distance. Only a moment later did the thunderbolt in the sky scatter. On the other hand, Xiaoyan's body had disappeared from the empty space at an unknown time. The scaled serpents and the giant ape's expressions changed when they realized this. But a split second later, the thunderclouds in the sky suddenly began to churn violently. Lightning shot out in all directions, but it was no longer as berserk and powerful as before. At the same time, a strange suction force surged out from the thunderclouds, forcibly tearing apart the lightning that surged out. The scaled serpents and the giant ape's hearts were filled with shock when they saw this strange scene. It was only a long time later when the lightning bolt scattered, revealing the figure within. Only then did the two of them understand that the source of the suction force was actually Xiaoyan, who had entered the thunderclouds. At this very moment, there were a total of 20 black tents standing in the void around Xiaoyan, surrounding him. The lightning bolts were completely devoured by the 20 tents. After being refined by Xiaoyan, waves of pure and enormous energy were poured into Xiaoyan's body. As for the 20 tents, half of them originated from the energy node in the cave below. Chapter 1086. After absorbing the strength of the Great Way within the energy nodes, Xiaoyan's tentacles, which were agglomerated from the Great Way of the Void, did indeed have 10 additional tentacles, just as he had expected. Moreover, Xiaoyan had also discovered that other than being able to help him traverse through empty space, his Void Great Way had another effect, devouring. The Way of the Void could help Xiaoyan devour the energy of the world at an even faster rate. After a simple refinement, the energy would flow into Xiaoyan's body before being refined by Xiaoyan's heavenly flame. Although it was roughly the same as absorbing and refining the energy on his own, the benefit of borrowing the way of the void to devour the energy of the world was that Xiao Yan could use it to devour even more powerful energy and avoid a portion of it affecting him. In other words, if Xiao Yan were to use his great Dao strength to devour those thunderbolts, the lightning strength that was emitted from them would not cause any harm to Xiao Yan's physical body. Instead, it would be directly sent into the heavenly flame to be refined and absorbed. This way, Xiao Yan's absorption of the lightning strength would be accelerated from another point of view. After a long while, Xiao Yan stood up in the air. The energy of the lightning in his body had been completely refined by Xiao Yan. It had become a large amount of energy that had fused with the vortex in Xiao Yan's body, becoming a part of him. After refining this energy, Xiao Yan was delighted to discover that his own cultivation had risen a little. Not only had he stabilized his advanced origin transformation stage cultivation, but his strength had also risen. This was an unexpected surprise. The way of the void had been strengthened, and his cultivation had increased. Adding on the fact that he had subdued an origin transformation realm expert like the heaven-reaching ape, it had to be said that Xiao Yan had benefited greatly from this trip to the desolate ancient ruins. Descending, Xiao Yan retrieved the cauldron and the violet jade pill from the cave. Afterward, he returned to the side of the scaled serpent and its companion. Seeing Xiao Yan descend, the heaven-reaching ape immediately rushed forward excitedly. It looked at Xiao Yan with a face full of smiles and hurriedly asked, "May I ask if the violet jade pill that Mr. Refined, here it is." Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan casually tossed a purple pill the size of a longan fruit to the former. Seeing this, the Tongtian giant ape hurriedly and carefully caught it. The scaled serpent at the side looked hesitantly at Xiao Yan, a trace of worry in its eyes. Only when it saw the confident smile on Xiao Yan's face, did it secretly relax. After all, Xiao Yan had roamed the continent for many years. His experience was extraordinary. If the scaled serpent could think of this, how could he not? This towering sky ape in front of Xiao Yan might have already obtained the purple jade pill, but even if he had used the medicinal pill to recover his cultivation, it would not be difficult for Xiao Yan to kill him if he had any thoughts. As expected, after obtaining the violet jade pill, the heaven-reaching great ape did not hesitate at all. After confirming that there was no problem with the pill, it hurriedly consumed the pill and sat down cross-legged. Not far from Xiao Yan and the scaled serpent, it began to use the pill to break the seal within its body. Roughly 4 hours later, the heaven-reaching great ape suddenly opened its tightly shut eyes. At the same time, an extremely powerful aura erupted from its body. Its aura was so powerful that it was comparable to a mid-origin transformation expert. What's going on? Why have I only recovered to mid-origin transformation? Brat, what did you do to me? Sensing that there was something wrong with its cultivation, the heaven-reaching great ape's face immediately changed. It looked at Xiao Yan with a gloomy expression and a vicious look in the depths of its eyes. As expected, you've turned your back on me, Xiao Yan quietly laughed coldly in his heart. Soon after, he took a step forward, shook his head and smiled. He raised his eyes to look at the former and said, he looked at the heaven-reaching great ape and said, I say, don't tell me you don't even understand the pill formula in your hands? The violet jade pill is indeed able to remove the seal for you, but its effects are only effective for 10 years after your cultivation is sealed. You've already been sealed here for who knows how many years. It's already pretty good that you've recovered to this extent. If you want to return to your peak, I'm afraid you'll have to find another method. What did you say? Hearing that, the heaven-reaching great ape was stunned. He never thought that the method he had always believed to be able to remove the seal would actually be unable to help him recover all his strength. If that was the case, he would be at a great disadvantage when facing Xiao Yan. I'm done playing. See you never. The muscles on the heaven-reaching great ape's face twitched slightly. He suddenly turned around and was about to charge out of the ruins. Heaven-reaching great ape, you promised me that you would join my faction. Why are you going back on your word now? Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, a mocking smile on his face. Upon hearing this, the heaven-reaching great ape grinned, revealing an icy sneer as he mocked. Heh, yes, I did promise you, but that was only before you helped me recover all my strength. Since you've failed to do so, why should I keep my promise? After finishing, the heaven-reaching great ape turned to leave. However, the moment he turned around, Xiao Yan raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In the next instant, wisps of light blue flames abruptly rose from the countless pores on the heaven-reaching great ape's body. In the blink of an eye, the flames had wrapped around his entire body. The sudden turn of events caused the heaven-reaching great ape's movements to abruptly freeze, his heart filled with shock. Just as he was about to circulate the Genesis Qi in his body, Xiao Yan behind him sneered. I advise you not to circulate the Genesis Qi in your body, or the heavenly fire on your body will only grow stronger and stronger. When that happens, even I won't be able to save you if you bring about your own destruction. The heaven-reaching great ape's heart was instantly alarmed. His body froze in the air as he angrily said without turning his head. Brat, you're despicable. Hee, I'm just taking precautions. If you had obediently followed me, I wouldn't have had to resort to such means. How about it, do you still want to leave now? Don't go too far. I, the heaven-reaching great ape, will not be bound by anyone. So you're not willing? Xiao Yan chuckled, his eyes narrowing slightly. At the same time, the raging flames burning on the former's body abruptly grew even more ferocious. Terrifying heat was released slightly, causing the heaven-reaching great ape to release a miserable howl. Enough. I promise you. In the end, the heaven-reaching great ape agreed with a roar, while Xiao Yan curled his lips into a smile. With a thought, the flames burning on the former's body scattered. If you're a little more straightforward, it will save me some effort. Xiao Yan indifferently glanced at the former. His body moved, and he led the two people behind him as they walked out of the desolate ancient remains with an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1087. After Xiao Yan's group of 3 left the desolate ancient ruins, everyone was still waiting outside. When Leng Bingshuang and Kai saw the bare-chested man behind Xiao Yan, they could not help but be shocked by his aura. Another mid-origin transformation realm expert. To the current them, such an expert was an absolute force to be reckoned with. Of course, while everyone was paying attention to the heaven-reaching ape, the latter's gaze also landed on Kai and Leng Bingshuang. When he saw Kai he could not help but feel shocked at how young she was. It was very difficult to imagine that such a young girl who still had some childishness would actually be an origin transformation expert. Moreover, her cultivation was not inferior to his current self. This guy actually has such a monstrous person by his side. His heart was slightly shocked. Immediately after, when his gaze landed on Leng Bingshuang, his entire face abruptly changed. His entire body involuntarily began to tremble. The heaven-reaching ape's face paled as his lips and teeth trembled. The fear in his heart was indescribable. Facing Leng Bingshuang, not only did he feel a kind of suppression in terms of cultivation, he could also feel the special aura within her body. It was a pressure that came from the royal bloodline of the devil-beast world. The pressure that came from the bloodline caused him to feel a deep sense of fear. He even had the urge to kneel before her. The law of the devil-beast world was simple and tyrannical. When facing an existence with a mid-high rank devil-beast bloodline, even if the difference in cultivation between them was not large, the former would still lose all ability to fight. At this moment, the heaven-reaching ape was facing Leng Bingshuang. It was also at this moment that Leng Bingshuang suddenly faced Xiao Yan and let out a cold snort. The heaven-reaching ape, who was filled with fear, instantly returned to his senses. He hurriedly controlled his emotions and retreated to the side with his head lowered. Xiao Yan was a little confused as he looked at Leng Bingshuang. Immediately, he saw the indifferent expression on the little fairy doctor's pretty face and immediately had a bad premonition in his heart. As for the remaining people, they were also silent. The atmosphere between them was inexplicably stiff. This strange atmosphere continued until the group returned to the depths of the Shilin mountain range. When everyone returned to this place, they discovered that quite a number of experts from Shao Gate were surrounding a white-clothed, young man on a mountain peak with grave expressions. The Do Qi within their bodies were agglomerated on the surface of their bodies. Their faces were filled with hostility, appearing extremely cautious. The young man sat cross-legged quietly with his eyes shut. He did not say a word, as if he was waiting for something. When Xiao Yan and the rest arrived, the latter's tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. His gaze instantly fell on Xiao Yan, who was standing in front of the crowd. At the same time, Xiao Yan's gaze had already noticed the latter's existence. However, the corner of his mouth was involuntarily lifted into a smile. This person's arrival could be said to be providing timely help. The aura of this person was extremely familiar to Xiao Yan. It was the young master of the Murong clan whom he had met in the ancient tomb of Heaven's End. He was also Murong Qianxian's elder brother, Murong Xian. Back then, Murong Xian had quite a lot of enmity toward Xiao Yan. However, after the incident with Yi Luo Tian, the relationship between both parties had become much warmer. When they met again this time around, Xiao Yan had a warm smile on his face. On the other hand, Murong Xian's eyes were filled with shock when he first saw Xiao Yan. Murong Xian clearly remembered that Xiao Yan had returned to the depths of the ancient tomb of Heaven's End by himself. Afterwards, the entire dwelling began to collapse. Logically speaking, Xiao Yan should have died in the tomb. However, looking at him now, Xiao Yan was actually standing there unscathed. This truly shocked Murong Xian, as well as somewhat rejoiced. Aside from this, what shocked Murong Xian the most was Xiao Yan's current cultivation. He could clearly sense that Xiao Yan's current aura was actually much more powerful than his own. After so many years, coupled with the inheritance he had obtained from the ancient tomb of Heaven's End, Murong Xian's cultivation had reached the early origin transformation realm. He was only a step away from the mid-origin transformation realm. Unfortunately, although this kind of cultivation could be considered a demon among most of the younger generation, there was too much of a gap when compared to the current Xiao Yan. Murong Xian, why have you come? Without a doubt, Leng Bingshuang was much more familiar with this person than Xiao Yan. The moment she saw him, she could not help but ask in doubt. Hee, Sister Bingshuang, it's like this. I've come this time because I have some matters to discuss with you. It's just that your welcoming party is a little too grand. Murong Xian swept his gaze over the surrounding people from the Xiao clan and could not help but laugh mockingly. Only when Xiao Yan and the others arrived did the crowd leave. Hee, Brother Murong, it's been a few years since we last met. How have you been? Xiao Yan opened his mouth with a face full of smiles when he had just arrived in front of him. At the same time, a pair of eyes that contained a glint also sized up the latter's body. After which, he repeatedly nodded. His eyes revealed a satisfied expression. If he could obtain the assistance of the person before him, his chances of victory in the battle in the Qin wasteland maze would undoubtedly increase by a lot. Noticing Xiao Yan's undisguised gaze, Murong Xian's heart immediately jumped. Behind him, Leng Bingshuang frowned as she glanced at Xiao Yan and asked in doubt, What? Do you know each other? That's right. Back then in the Tianjue ancient tomb, I met Mr. Xiao Yan a few times. Murong Xian's gaze continued to stare at Xiao Yan as his eyes faintly flickered. It's not just a few times. Back then, Yi Luo Tian joined forces with the young valley master of the Qin wasteland Maze Valley and almost killed Brother Murong. You can't have forgotten about this, right? Hearing this, Xiao Yan grinned. However, there was a deliberate tone in his words. When Murong Xian heard this, he cupped his hands and thanked Xiao Yan with a dry smile. However, it was Leng Bingshuang who knitted her eyebrows and said in a somewhat low voice, What? You've come into contact with the people from the Qin wasteland Maze Valley? When these words were spoken, Murong Xian immediately felt helpless. He had clearly come with a mission. Why was the matter from back then being brought up instead? Moreover, from the looks of it, Leng Bingshuang seemed to be very concerned about it. Helpless, Murong Xian roughly recounted how Yi Luo Tian and his group had taken the initiative to find trouble with them back then. Although Leng Bingshuang only heard the gist of the story, she was able to understand how dangerous it was. However, she was somewhat surprised by Xiao Yan's actions. Yi Luo Tian. Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. In 10 days, this king will definitely make you pay the price in blood. Leng Bingshuang's ice-cold eyes stared intently at the empty space in front of her as her jade-like hands slowly clenched. The instant her jade-like hands clenched into fists, the empty space in front of her actually exploded with a bang. This scene caused the hearts of the few people behind her to secretly shiver. Even Xiao Yan could not help but involuntarily curl his lips. However, the words that Leng Bingshuang spat out soon after caused Xiao Yan's heart to immediately rejoice. Murong Xian, you should stay in the Shilin mountain range for the time being. In 10 days, when we have a decisive battle with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley, we will take back all the humiliation from back then. Chapter 1088. Murong Xian was speechless when he heard Leng Bingshuang's words. He did not even know what had happened here. He had only come this time to pass on a message to Leng Bingshuang. Why had he been left here? Moreover, it seemed that he was going to participate in a great battle. This had truly caught Murong Xian off guard. However, Tianing and the others quickly explained Leng Bingshuang's words to him. They even explained clearly about the great battle between the Shao Gate and the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley 10 days later. Of course, it had only been 8 days since the start of the great battle. Even though Murong Xian wanted to refuse, he could not help but swallow the words that had already reached his mouth when he saw Leng Bingshuang's icy face. On the other side, Xiao Yan had also relaxed. Counting it this way, with the addition of Murong Xian and the towering sky giant ape, his Shao Gate currently had 6 origin transformation stage experts. In this way, he would have some confidence even if the people from the Ghost Hall were to attack. 6 origin transformation experts. A lineup like this was already enough to crush the entire western region. If it were not for his fear of the Ghost Hall, Xiao Yan would have already brought people to find them. There was no need for them to wait for 10 days. After that, Murong Xian also clearly explained the purpose of his visit. It seemed that the clan behind him wanted Leng Bingshuang to take some time to return. Although these words sounded somewhat cordial, Xiao Yan was able to hear some sincerity in them. With regards to this, Leng Bingshuang also had the intention to pursue the matter. Murong Xian, on the other hand, vaguely refused to explain. This caused Xiao Yan and Leng Bingshuang to harbor even more doubts in their hearts. However, it must be said that the current western region was really in troubled times. Although the Shilin mountain range appeared rather quiet, the news of the decisive battle between the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley and the Shilin mountain range swiftly spread throughout the Shilin region and the western wasteland as if it had grown wings. On the 4th day of the 10-day period, the Shilin mountain range actually received an uninvited guest. Deep within the Shilin mountain range, the people from the Shao Gate, who were preparing for the great battle 6 days later, suddenly sensed an aura that originated from outside the Shilin mountain range. The strength of the aura caused the expressions of all the Dou-Di present to change. Everyone felt a wave of shock in their hearts. Since when had origin transformation experts become so worthless in the western region? This person was actually an origin transformation realm expert. Swoosh swoosh, following a couple of sonic booms, Xiao Yan's group was already standing high in the sky. The one at the front was naturally Xiao Yan. Behind him were Leng Bingshuang, the little fairy doctor, and the rest. Only the heaven-reaching ape and Murong Xian were not present among them. Before knowing the identity of the person who had come, Xiao Yan hoped that he could temporarily hide a portion of his strength to avoid bringing unnecessary trouble to his group during the great battle. Only by knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy could one emerge victorious in 100 battles. Currently, Xiao Yan did not even know the true strength of the other party. How could he easily expose the faction in his hands? Although this person was a great distance away, Xiao Yan was still able to recognize him by relying on the familiarity in his memories. This person was actually Bai Zhan. Bai Zhan was the young master of the Bai family, one of the 4 great clans under the Heavenly Sword sect. His father, Bai Ying, was a crafty person. Back when he was still a subordinate of the Heavenly Sword sect, he had secretly allied with Xiao Yan. However, the 4 great sects had all been unified by the Withered Leaf sect, so logically speaking, the Bai family should have become Yi Luotian's subordinates. Why had he come? Brother Xiao, I never thought that you would have already reached the origin transformation realm after not seeing you for so many years. This really does surprise me. Before the person arrived, a bold laughter was transmitted over. Hearing this voice, Xiao Yan was even more certain in his heart. Who else could this person be other than Bai Zhan? Brother Bai Zhan, you're not bad either. Haven't you also reached the origin transformation realm? Xiao Yan clasped his hands at the empty space in front of him and smiled. Soon after, the originally empty space really began to distort. Soon after, the figure of a young man in white robes appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the others. The moment he appeared, the young man in white robes could not help but laugh. How can a mere initial origin transformation expert compare to Brother Xiao? It said that a few days ago, you forced back 2 origin transformation experts from the lost valley of the Qin wastelands by yourself. You're the one who can be called a hero of our generation. The expression in Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily changed after Bai Zhan's words. He faintly smiled and changed the topic. However, he was suspicious inside. Logically speaking, news of Qin Shua and Yi Luotian being chased away by him and the others being killed by him should not have spread to the outside world. So how did Bai Zhan find out? Unless, in this vast mountain forest, there were still spies of his. Then their actions in the past few days were, don't worry Brother Xiao. My Bai clan has nothing to do with the lost valley of the Qin wastelands or even Yi Luotian. As if he had seen through Xiao Yan's worries, Bai Zhan's words hit the nail on the head, causing Xiao Yan's heart to shiver slightly. The members of the Bai clan were truly too shrewd. Behind Xiao Yan, Leng Bingshuang, Tian Ying and the others all frowned when they heard these words. They were somewhat suspicious in their hearts. Was there still a faction in the current western region that had not been touched by the lost valley of the Qin wastelands? If these words were uttered from someone else's mouth, Xiao Yan might still have some doubts. However, when these words came from Bai Zhan's mouth, Xiao Yan felt that he naturally believed them. It was as though he believed something that was only natural. As the saying goes, one does not visit a temple without a cause. Brother Bai Zhan must have come to discuss our decisive battle with the lost valley of the Qin wastelands in a few days, right? Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes as he said with a slight smile. Bai Zhan also parted his mouth and smiled when he heard this. He exchanged glances with Xiao Yan and the smiles on their faces gradually widened. Yes, but not entirely. Xiao Yan was immediately startled when these words were spoken. Leng Bingshuang, who was behind him, also immediately turned her ice-cold gaze towards Bai Zhan. Her eyes contained a trace of enmity. If he was not here to help them, he could be treated as an enemy. Brother Xiao, I have not come here to discuss cooperation with you. Before he could finish his sentence, Leng Bingshuang, who was behind Xiao Yan, shook her delicate body. A powerful aura immediately surged out from her body. Bai Zhan's expression also changed slightly. On the other hand, Xiao Yan hurriedly stopped Leng Bingshuang, who was about to go berserk, when his expression changed. Soon after, he looked towards Bai Zhan. When the latter saw the helpless expression on Xiao Yan's face, a smile that was not a smile quickly flashed across his face. After which, he continued to speak. I have come here this time to tell you a piece of news. I believe that this news should be extremely important to you. Bai Zhan smiled confidently. Under Xiao Yan's doubtful gaze, he opened his mouth once again. I wonder if Brother Xiao still remembers the withered leaf goo. Chapter 1089. Dry leaf goo. Bai Zhan's words had just left his mouth when Xiao Yan's expression slightly changed. He naturally remembered that item clearly. Dry leaf goo was Yi Luotian's unique method. It could refine a goo into the shape of a pill. Although its effects were no different from the extreme transformation pill, the difference was that the dry leaf goo would poison a person's body. Anyone who swallowed the dry leaf goo would be under Yi Luotian's control. Anyone who disobeyed would suffer unbearable agony with a single thought. Hence, anyone who swallowed the dry leaf goo would be under Yi Luotian's command for the rest of their lives. But what was Bai Zhan's motive for saying these words? Looks like Brother Xiao still remembers. I believe there is no need for me to explain the effects of this dry leaf goo. Anyone who consumes it will be under Yi Luotian's control. The moment these words were spoken, the expressions of the few people behind Xiao Yan immediately changed. Tianning and the rest also swiftly recalled the terrifying scene they had witnessed back then. However, he was able to kill someone with just a thought. Such a method could be said to be shocking. However, there is one exception, and that is you. Brother Xiao, you had also swallowed the dry leaf goo back then. Not only did you not fall under Yi Luotian's control, you even borrowed the dry leaf goo's effects to successfully raise your cultivation. I believe Brother Xiao has not forgotten about this matter. The moment Bai Zhan's words faded, Tianning and the rest behind Xiao Yan swiftly recalled the incident. Indeed, although the dry leaf goo was terrifying, it was unable to do anything in front of Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. This caused Yi Luotian to have the opposite effect and personally raise Xiao Yan's cultivation. When Tianning and the rest recounted the incident back then, the little fairy doctor and the rest could not help but chuckle. However, Xiao Yan's gaze was focused on Bai Zhan from beginning to end. Brother Bai Zhan, if you have anything to say, please speak frankly. Upon hearing this, the latter could not help but raise his eyebrows. Soon after, he pursed his lips into a smile and said, since that is the case, I shall not speak any further. My purpose for coming here this time is mainly to tell Brother Xiao that although the Qin wasteland Maze Valley has been continuously expanding over the years, the one who is truly difficult to deal with is not Qin Shua, but Yi Luotian. During these years, he has relied on the withered leaf goo to secretly control experts. Most of those who were given medicinal pills by him in the name of saving lives have fallen under his control. As for those who did not listen to his orders, they were killed by him. Now, the number of people under his control is innumerable. Among them, there are over 30 Do-Di experts. Among them, there is even an origin transformation expert. The expression on the faces of Xiao Yan's group suddenly changed drastically when these words were uttered. The enormous rock in their hearts, which was originally considered calm, suddenly sank a little, causing the breathing of these few people to involuntarily become rough. What they currently knew was merely the foundation of the Qin wasteland Maze Valley's strength. As for Yi Luotian, other than Xiao Yan's baseless guess, there was no other news. However, Bai Zhan's words could be considered as a heavy blow to Xiao Yan and the rest. Over 30 Do-Di experts, one origin transformation expert, Yi Luotian, Qin Shua, the other 2 origin transformation experts in the Qin wasteland Maze Valley, and the 50 Do-Di that they currently possessed on the surface. This also meant that the Qin wasteland Maze Valley possessed 5 origin transformation experts and 80 Do-Di experts. Such a lineup could be said to be terrifying. However, the thing that Xiao Yan was most worried about was still the people from the Ghost Hall. There was no doubt that the people from the Ghost Hall would participate in this battle. Once the Ghost Hall also dispatched origin transformation experts to reinforce the Qin wasteland Maze Valley, the chances of victory for the Xiao Gate would be greatly reduced. It was unexpected that the situation between the Shao Gate and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley had unknowingly become so dangerous. If they were the slightest bit careless, Shao Yan and the Shao Gate would be consigned to eternal damnation. Fortunately, if Shao Yan was completely unaware of all this, the result would perhaps be very difficult to fathom. However, Baijian's appearance seemed to have unknowingly disrupted the Qin Wasteland Maze Valleys, or perhaps Yi Luotian's, arrangements. Shao Yan's pitch-black eyes flashed. He immediately raised his head and his gaze met Baijian's. The two of them tacitly smiled at the same time. Leng Bingshuang and the rest also raised their eyebrows, appearing to be deep in thought. Since those people were under Yi Luotian's control because of the dry leaf goo, it was likely that none of them were willing to sincerely work for Yi Luotian. In other words, if Shao Yan was able to use the heavenly flame to remove the dry leaf goo in their bodies, the 30 over Do Di and origin transformation experts under Yi Luotian would naturally cease to exist once these people regained their freedom. At that time, the Shao Gate would naturally have a higher chance of victory in the battle in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Now, what Shao Yan needed to do was to think of a way to rescue those 30 over people under Yi Luotian's nose. Although I am very grateful for you telling me all this, I still really want to know why you are telling me such important information. Shao Yan withdrew his thoughts. His gaze once again landed on Baijian as he asked with a serious expression. He, just treat it as repayment for brother Shao saving my father back then. Baijian's eyes flickered faintly as he smiled faintly. It's that simple? When two tigers fight, one will definitely be injured. But if the result is that both sides are injured, brother Baijian. Shao Yan stared intently at Baijian. Behind him, Leng Bingshuang and Kai also began to circulate the Genesis Qi in their bodies. Baijian naturally sensed this. His heart tightened, but he did not do anything. He paused for a moment before smiling. Brother Shao is worrying too much. Don't tell me that brother Shao doesn't even have a little bit of trust in my Bai clan after working together so many times? I don't think there's a need for me to explain what happened before and what happened after. This time, Shao Yan did not joke around. A single sentence from him caused Baijian's expression to abruptly change as his gaze involuntarily swept across Leng Bingshuang and Kai. However, I am still very grateful for brother Baijian's information. No matter what your motive is, this information is extremely important to me. If there is nothing else, I believe that brother Baijian should return. I'm afraid that you will not be used to staying here. Shao Yan cupped his hands in a heavy manner. Unexpectedly, Shao Yan did not make things difficult for Baijian. Instead, he purposely found a way out for the latter. Baijian also responded immediately. He turned around and left. He did not pause even a little. However, not long after Baijian had walked out, Shao Yan suddenly opened his mouth and spoke loudly from behind. Brother Bai, I, Shao Yan, am not an ungrateful person. However, if anyone tries to ride on my head, I will not hesitate to eliminate them. Hence, I hope that we can always talk face to face. Baijian's pupils abruptly shrank when he heard these words. His body quickly accelerated, dashing out of the Shilin mountain range at an astonishing speed. At the same time, in a distant mountain forest, the expression of a figure in white robes abruptly changed when he heard the mighty voice. Shock involuntarily flowed out from his eyes. This person was the head of the Bai clan, Baijian's father, Bai Ying. Chapter 1090. After Baijian left, Shao Yan swiftly discussed the authenticity of this matter with Leng Bingshuang and the others. Finally, everyone's opinion was the same. They would rather believe the information that Baijian had provided than not. Hence, Shao Yan's group was bound to head to the western wastelands. According to the information that Baijian had provided, the 30 over elite Do Di were secretly hidden by Yi Luotian in a small valley called the Flat Mountain West Col outside of the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. As this was Yi Luotian's own trump card, he did not hand these people over to Qin Shua. Hence, the existence of these people was an extremely secretive piece of information. It was almost impossible for outsiders to know about it. Moreover, in order to not attract any attention, there were only 6 people guarding the western col of the flat mountain. These 6 people were all high-class Dodi. Although there were only 6 elite Dodi, the Doqi of the people in the flat mountain west col had already been sealed by Yi Luotian's order due to the withered leaf gu. Hence, the people inside did not have any means to resist. If anyone did not comply, they would be directly killed by these 6 people. However, on the whole, this kind of mission could not be considered troublesome for Xiao Yan. With his strength, dealing with 6 elite Dodi was extremely easy. Although this was the case, the little fairy doctor and the rest still held a doubtful attitude toward this mission. How could there be such an easy task in this world? A faction that could sweep through the entire western region actually only sent 6 elite Dodi to guard it. This was too much of a joke. However, this time around, Xiao Yan chose to believe unconditionally. He believed the information that Baijian had provided. He believed that there were only 6 elite Dodi guarding the place. He even believed that there would not be any trouble on this trip. Finally, under the insistence of the little fairy doctor and the rest, Xiao Yan continued on his journey alone. Leng Bingshuang and the rest were entrusted by Xiao Yan to guard the Shilin mountain range and block their path. Additionally, with Xiao Yan's speed, it was very difficult for them to catch up even if they wanted to. That day, Xiao Yan headed to the western wastelands alone. By noon the next day, he had already arrived at the boundary of the western wastelands. Once again arriving at this place, Xiao Yan could not help but sigh in his heart. However, after that, it was another boring journey. Following the map, Xiao Yan quickly found the so-called flat mountain west kernel in the vast desert. 2 sand dunes sat in the cold wind. Desolate sand came from afar was blocked and swirled around these 2 sand dunes. Finally, it became a part of the sand dunes. Solid rocks and soil stood majestically, as if there were armored soldiers standing in the middle of the desert. The special environment between heaven and earth created this place. In the gap between 2 sand dunes, due to the special environment, the wind and sand swirled around the gap for a while before returning to the sand dunes. This caused more and more sand to accumulate and the sand dunes to gradually rise. At the same time, the gap between the 2 sand dunes naturally formed another space. This was the flat mountain west kernel. The narrow entrance was so small that only 3 people could enter at the same time. Only after several hundred feet did the space within gradually become wider. There was no way to go any deeper. This flat mountain west col was actually a fatal spot. It was indeed a good place to kill and rob. Under the investigation of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, there were indeed only 6 high-class Dodi in this flat mountain west col other than a group of people whose cultivations had been sealed. These 6 people were all 9-star Dodi. From the looks of it, Yi Luotian had indeed put in a lot of effort in order to guard this group of people. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan, who was in the outside world, could not help but smile coldly. 6 9-star Dodi. This kind of lineup could indeed be described as powerful on the surface. Unfortunately, there was too much of a difference in front of an origin transformation expert. With a flick of his finger, a strange dark black energy suddenly agglomerated in the empty space in front of him. In an instant, it turned into a dark black curtain. After which, Xiao Yan took a step forward and his entire body disappeared from the sky in the blink of an eye. Swoosh! Almost at the same time, in the depths of the western col of the flat mountain, a human figure suddenly appeared out of thin air in front of the 6 people who were originally sitting cross-legged. The sudden change caused the 6 people, who were sitting cross-legged with their eyes closed, to suddenly leap up. The expressions on their faces changed drastically. As 9-star Dodi, there were very few people who could arrive in front of them without them noticing. Hence, there was no need to doubt the strength of the person who had arrived. "May I know who you are? Why have you come here?" While the 6 of them retreated, their respectful voices were emitted. After all, there was no doubt that the person they were facing was an origin transformation expert. If they did not treat him with respect, there would be great trouble. I am Xiao Yan. I have specially come to ask for something from the 6 of you. Xiao Yan parted his mouth and coldly smiled. At the same time, his body suddenly rushed forward. His movement was like lightning as both of his hands were clenched into fists and he faced the 6 people. Ask for something? Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. You are Xiao Yan. However, by the time the 6 of them reacted, Xiao Yan's body had already appeared in front of the 6 of them in a ghost-like manner. His fist was thrown out like the wind. Before they could maneuver the dou qi in their bodies, Xiao Yan's fist had already landed on their chests. Bang 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 bang, with 6 consecutive punches, the 6 9-star dou di were killed by Xiao Yan at lightning speed. The appearance of this scene caused everyone to truly feel the gap between an elite dou di and an origin transformation expert. In front of the latter, even a 9-star dou di was no match for him. Xiao Yan finished off these 6 9-star dou di in a lightning-like manner. Soon after, his body appeared deep within the western col of the flat mountain. A special restriction had been placed in this place. Those 30-plus experts were sealed within this restriction. Although this seal was not a formation, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that it contained Yi Luotian's aura. If an outsider were to forcefully attack this western col, even if they could get past the 6 9-star dou di outside, they would immediately be discovered by Yi Luotian if they touched this seal. It seemed that in order to ensure that nothing unexpected would happen here, Yi Luotian had not only chosen to hide these people in the western col, which was relatively close to the Qin Wasteland's Maze Valley, but he had also used this seal to ensure that he was connected to this place. This was to ensure that he would be able to take care of this place in time if someone were to forcefully attack. Unfortunately, although this seal was related to Yi Luotian, Xiao Yan, who possessed the Great Way of the Void, could easily avoid being discovered by him. Haha, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth was lifted into a cold smile. He quickly raised his hand and formed a seal with his 10 fingers. At the same time, the dark black curtain once again condensed in front of him. Additionally, the power of the Great Way was also condensed in the space behind the seal. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body entered it. The moment he entered, Xiao Yan saw a group of people with cautious expressions. When Xiao Yan's gaze swept over them, he was surprised to discover that there was actually an expert he had seen before. At the same time, this person was the only origin transformation expert among the 30-plus people. This person was one of the top 3 experts in the western region, Lu Zhongtian. Chapter 1091. Shilin Region, Green Hunchback Mountain, the former site of the 4 great sections. At the peak of the mountain, layers of buildings were being rebuilt at an astonishing speed. The entire Green Hunchback Mountain looked brand new in a short period of time. Somewhere on the cliff, 2 figures in white robes stood side by side. These 2 people were actually Bai Ying and Bai Zhan, father and son. Ever since Xiao Yan and the others destroyed the remaining forces in Green Hunchback Mountain a few days ago, the Bai clan had taken advantage of this opportunity to take advantage of the situation. Although Green Hunchback Mountain was only the former site of the 4 great sects, the treasures within were still unimaginable to outsiders. With the Bai clan's manpower, they had obtained all the remaining resources of the 4 great sections. To them, this was considered a large sum. Of course, to them, the most valuable thing was still Green Hunchback Mountain. Now, Yi Luotian had already brought his people and merged with the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Green Hunchback Mountain was already an ownerless land. As the resource-rich Green Hunchback Mountain in Shilin region, once they could occupy it, the resources within would be enough to support them to become the next superpower. Father, do you think Xiao Yan will save them? Bai Ying and his father stood with their hands behind their backs as they gazed at the vast Shilin region and the boundless mountain range. At a certain moment, Bai Zhan could not help but ask out of curiosity. Hee, he will definitely go. Bai Ying smiled faintly as a somewhat confident smile appeared on his face. Seeing this, Bai Zhan was even more so. The father and son looked at each other and smiled, their eyes flickering with the same light of wisdom. Father, what do you think of Xiao Yan? How do you think you compare to him? In response to Bai Zhan's question, Bai Ying's words caused the former to be at a loss. Seeing this, Bai Ying could not help but sigh deeply as he said in a low voice. I can only say that this person is not an enemy. At the same time, in the western wilderness region, on the west side of Flat Mountain, Xiao Yan stared at the middle-aged man in front of him in astonishment. Who would have thought that even this man would become Yi Luotian's prisoner? Lu Zhongtian was once known as one of the 3 peak experts of the western region. Although he was a 9-star Daoist, his cultivation was close to the origin transformation realm. His battle prowess was known as the strongest below the origin transformation realm. As for the other 2, Xiao Yan believed that they were Qin Shua and Leng Bingshuang. However, Xiao Yan did not expect that he would be controlled by Yi Luotian even with his current cultivation. This really caused one to feel surprised. Seeing that the black-robed young man in front of him had actually called out his name, Lu Zhongtian could not help but reveal a disappointed expression. After Xiao Yan announced his name, shock immediately appeared on the faces of the people present, who were originally wary of him. Xiao Yan's name could be said to be known by everyone within the western region. This was especially the case for the big battle that was about to arrive a couple of days later. It had attracted the attention of a countless number of people. Although they were in the nest, they had also learned of this matter from the mouths of the 6 people outside. From this, one could tell just what kind of great reputation Xiao Yan currently possessed within the western region. Of course, all of this was the doing of Yi Luotian and the rest. Their goal was to let everyone in the western region see the defeat of the Shao clan in the big battle a few days later. Once the Shao clan was defeated, the other factions in the western region would naturally crumble from the bottom of their hearts. Controlling the western region in the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley would be a piece of cake. In this battle, the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley was not only after the Shilin mountain range. What they coveted was the entire western region. Mr. Xiao Yan, the big battle between you and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley is imminent. Won't you be in danger if Yi Luotian discovers that you have come here alone? Lu Zhongtian, who had recovered, hurriedly reminded Xiao Yan. At the same time, the faces of the people behind him involuntarily revealed a furious expression when they heard Yi Luotian's name. If it was not because of Yi Luotian, so many of them would not have been imprisoned in this place. A dignified elite Daoist was actually being imprisoned like a prisoner. This was really a great humiliation. Cuckoo, everyone, relax. I have come here to rescue all of you and leave this place. Xiao Yan merely smiled when he heard this. His face was indifferent. However, everyone present could only helplessly smile bitterly at this. Escape. How could they not want to escape from this place? Unfortunately, even if they could escape, they would still be unable to escape from Yi Luotian's evil clutches. After swallowing the dry leaf goo, their lives were already in Yi Luotian's hands. If he wanted them to live, they would live. If he wanted them to die, they would die. The so-called Daoist was just like a joke. Sigh, Mr. Xiao Yan, as you can see, it's not that we don't want to leave. However, it's a pity that we have been poisoned by Yi Luotian's dry leaf goo. Even if we leave this place, we will still be captured by him. I know that Mr. Xiao Yan has come here to prevent us from becoming Yi Luotian's helpers in the battle in a few days. Unfortunately, we are now under his control and even we are unable to control our own actions. Therefore, Mr. Xiao Yan, in order for us to regain our freedom and for the safety of the western region, you should kill us. Once these words were spoken, everyone's faces instantly revealed a trace of fear. However, in the end, they still sighed with heavy expressions. Indeed, the only way for them to break free from Yi Luotian's control was to kill all of them. Cuckoo, Elder Lu's words are too serious. I am here to rescue all of you, how can I kill all of you? Don't worry, there is nothing in this world that is impossible. No matter how powerful Yi Luotian's dry leaf goo is, it does not mean that there is no way to break it. Xiao Yan pursed his lips into a smile, his face filled with confidence. Lu Zhongtian's expression was immediately startled when he saw the confident smile that was revealed on Xiao Yan's face. After which, everyone present saw Xiao Yan slowly raise his hand. A thought passed through his mind and a puff sound was heard. A cluster of pale blue flames appeared in Xiao Yan's palm. This is a heavenly flame. The instant this flame appeared, everyone present could not help but cry out in surprise. Even Lu Zhongtian's face could not help but reveal a shocked expression. Soon after, they saw Xiao Yan's hands suddenly clench and the flame in his palm instantly exploded, splitting into numerous thumb-sized flames that stopped in front of everyone present. Looking at the tiny ball of flame floating in front of them, none of the people present dared to underestimate it. A heavenly flame was the most domineering force in the world. Even if it was only a small ball, its power was definitely not to be underestimated. Furthermore, the dou qi in their bodies had been completely sealed and they did not have the slightest bit of strength to resist the heavenly flame. If they were to come into contact with even the slightest bit of it, they would instantly lose their lives. Everyone, if you trust me, please swallow the flame in front of you. Once the heavenly flame enters your body, it will naturally remove the dry leaf goo in your body. At that time, Yi Luotian's control over all of you will naturally disappear and everyone will regain their freedom. Once these words were spoken, although many of the people present were moved, they did not dare to open their mouths to swallow it. After all, the thing floating in front of them was a heavenly flame. If they were the slightest bit careless, only death awaited them. Who would dare to carelessly try? On the other hand, Lu Zhongtian could only grit his teeth when he saw that the person behind him was unmoved. He looked at Xiao Yan and nodded heavily. Soon after, he swallowed the floating flame in front of him. As soon as the heavenly flame entered his body, it rapidly spread out. Relying on the natural restraining effect of fire on plants, it rapidly burned away all the dry leaf goo in Lu Zhongtian's body in a short period of time. The moment the dry leaf goo was completely removed, the sealed Genesis Qi in Lu Zhongtian's body abruptly began to circulate and his cultivation recovered. It's a success. My cultivation has recovered and the dry leaf goo has also been completely removed. Lu Zhongtian could not help but loudly cry out after recovering his cultivation. At the same time, a faint layer of Genesis Qi rose from the surface of his body. Sure enough, his initial origin transformation stage cultivation had been completely restored. With Lu Zhongtian at the front, everyone behind him was naturally excited. They did not hesitate to swallow the flame in front of them. Not long after, the 30-plus elite Dou Di present and Lu Zhongtian, who was at the initial stage of the origin transformation realm, completely recovered their cultivation. After everyone thanked Xiao Yan in unison, they all left Pingshan Mountain Pass through the great path of the void under his lead. As such, one of Yi Luotian's greatest trump cards had been neutralized by Xiao Yan. With this hidden danger removed, it was time to prepare for the official showdown in the Qin Desolate Maze Valley. Chapter 1092. Xiao Yan did not go straight back to the Shilin mountain range after leaving the western valley of the flat mountain. Instead, he turned and went to a city in the western wilderness. Distant Saint City, where the Alchemist Alliance of the western region was located, was also one of the most prosperous cities in the western region. Xiao Yan went to Distant Saint City this time, hoping to use his relationship with the Alchemist Alliance to get their help in this war. Xiao Yan did not wait too long after arriving at Distant Saint City, but went directly to the headquarters of the Alchemist Alliance in the city. He hoped to see Xing Gan this time. If that was the case, he might be able to achieve his purpose of coming here. Xiao Yan arrived in front of the Alchemist Alliance. He looked at the enormous building in front of him and involuntarily felt a shock in his heart. It was indeed worthy of being the Alchemist Alliance. It was likely that no one in the entire western region would be able to afford such an extravagance. The building of the Alchemist Alliance was like a rugged mountain. The layers of buildings were high into the clouds, and the peak was so high that it reached the 9 heavens. The towering figure was like a huge beast standing in the city. There was a pill fragrance permeating the air from time to time, as if it was shrouded in clouds, making it look even more magnificent. The tall main gate stood in the city in a domineering manner. At this moment, Xiao Yan was standing in front of the gate. Looking at the 2 soldiers in black armor standing on both sides of the gate, Xiao Yan could not help but raise his eyebrows. The cultivation of these 2 people had actually reached the level of 3-star Dodi. Letting a Dodi guard the gate, this was probably something that even the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley could not do. The Alchemist Alliance was really rich and imposing. Then, Xiao Yan lifted his foot and was about to enter, but at this moment, the 2 soldiers suddenly took a step forward and stretched out their hands at the same time, blocking Xiao Yan's path. "Mister, if you want to enter the Alchemist Alliance, you must first show the Alchemist badge granted by the Alliance, or the cultivation of the Origin Transformation Realm. Otherwise, no one is allowed to enter." 2 majestic and overbearing voices rang out at the same time, causing Xiao Yan, who had taken a step forward, to involuntarily take a step back. Only then did he understand. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to take out the alchemist badge that Han Dong had given him, Xiao Yan's side suddenly felt a wave of energy rushing over. Xiao Yan glanced from the corner of his eyes and saw a young man who was about to push open the door of the Alchemist Alliance. Xiao Yan frowned. His body moved slightly to the side and easily dodged the young man's action. At the same time, his body moved to the side as he looked at the latter with a solemn expression. Where did this little brat come from? Can't you see that Grandmaster Zhao is here? You actually dare to block the door." Seeing the displeasure on Xiao Yan's face, the young man's face was filled with disdain. He coldly glanced at Xiao Yan before instantly turning his head. With a smile, he looked at an old man wearing alchemist robes behind him. The old man's figure was slightly stooped. Aside from his head, his entire body was covered by the alchemist robes. His old face was both withered and yellow, but it was also filled with vitality. The most eye-catching hooked nose was his greatest distinguishing feature. A pair of deeply sunken old eyes gave off a sharp light. Combined with his stooped body, he looked like a vulture, causing people to tremble in fear. "Jia Ming, before we left, didn't I tell you not to get angry today? Do you want the people in the Alliance to laugh at me?" The old man spoke faintly. His gaze did not land on Xiao Yan from the beginning until the end. That young man called Jia Ming hurriedly smiled and nodded when he heard this. However, his face was filled with an unconcerned expression. This was only today. If it was any other day, why would this old man care about suppressing others? "Alright, let's go in," the old man indifferently said. Then, he slowly moved forward. When Jia Ming saw this, he hurriedly went forward to support him. As for the 2 soldiers who were blocking Xiao Yan's path, they hurriedly bowed and opened up a path for the 2 of them. Only when they saw the 2 of them enter the Alchemist Alliance did they shake their heads and withdraw their gazes. Clearly, even though they were clear about the nature of these 2 people, they were helpless. Soon after, Xiao Yan once again stepped forward. With a faint smile on his face, he took out the alchemist badge from his storage ring. When the 2 of them saw the badge, their faces immediately revealed a respectful expression. Xiao Yan also politely nodded his head and entered the Alchemist Alliance. When they saw Xiao Yan's figure enter, the 2 soldiers once again withdrew their gazes. They looked at each other and could not help but nod their heads. Their mouths were filled with amazement. Compared to the old man who had just entered, the current Xiao Yan far surpassed him in terms of age and behavior. Sometimes, one really could not judge a person based on his appearance. After entering the Alchemist Alliance, there were quite a number of people walking about in the spacious hall on the first floor. As for the two people who had just entered, they had already disappeared. After a few inquiries, Xiao Yan met a white-haired old man with a kind face in the hall on the first floor. The latter was the deacon of this place. He was in charge of guiding newcomers to the Alchemist Alliance for the first time. Young friend, this old man is Han Dan. I heard you say that you have come to the Alliance this time to find the vice-chairman. Arriving in front of him, the old man's turbid eyes swept across Xiao Yan's body. A glint immediately flashed in the depths of his eyes. He immediately cupped his hands together and politely asked. That's right. This junior has come to the Alliance this time to find Vice-Chairman Han Dong. Hearing this, Xiao Yan did not dare to tarry and hurriedly cupped his hands together. With his cultivation, it was naturally not difficult for him to see that this old man was actually an origin transformation expert. He never imagined that even an ordinary-looking deacon in the Alchemist Alliance would possess such a cultivation. It was truly eye-catching. Young friend, you may not know this, but the Alchemist Alliance has a special rule. Anyone who comes to the Alchemist Alliance for the first time can only request to see the person who invited them to the Alliance unless they have made an appointment beforehand. Thus, I'm sorry, but I wonder if you can show me your alchemist badge before you enter? Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the old man's face did not show much surprise. He had met far too many people who wanted to see the president. However, rules were rules, and no one could change them. Xiao Yan could not help but be surprised by this. He never imagined that it would be so difficult to meet someone in the Alchemist Alliance. However, he understood after thinking about it. The Alchemist Alliance had an extraordinary status on the continent. There were countless people who wanted to curry favor with the Alchemist Alliance. It was normal for the Alchemist Alliance to have such a rule. Afterward, Xiao Yan casually handed over the badge in his hand to the old man. He clearly understood that the name of the person who invited them would be clearly engraved on the back of every badge issued by the Alchemist Alliance. This method would save him a lot of trouble. Sure enough, when the old man saw the two words Han Dong engraved on the back of the badge, shock immediately appeared on his face. He never imagined that the young man in front of him would actually be personally invited by Han Dong. However, since that was the case, he naturally had to bring Xiao Yan to see Han Dong. Young friend, please follow me. The old man smiled amiably and led the way for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan also smiled and nodded. He took back the badge that the old man had returned. After which, he followed the old man upstairs to search for Han Dong. Chapter 1093. Very quickly, Xiao Yan arrived in front of a stone door under the guidance of the old man. Along the way, the white-haired old man continuously beat around the bush with Xiao Yan, trying to find out the latter's identity. After all, the black-robed young man was so young and was personally invited by the vice president. He did not believe that the black-robed young man in front of him was some nobody. Unfortunately, no matter how the old man interrogated, Xiao Yan still managed to answer him in a clever manner. From the beginning to the end, the old man was unable to get any useful information out of him. In the end, the two of them simply became quiet until they arrived in front of the stone door. There was a living room outside the stone door. It was fully furnished. At this moment, when Xiao Yan and Han Dan arrived, they discovered that Jia Ming and the old man, whom they had met outside the Alchemist Alliance, were also here. Moreover, from their appearance, they seemed to be waiting for something. When the two of them saw Xiao Yan and Han Dan arrive, they hurriedly stood up. The old man's gaze immediately landed on Han Dan. On the other hand, Jia Ming's gaze was fixed on Xiao Yan the moment he saw him. He frowned tightly and his heart was filled with suspicion. He could not understand why this young brat would appear here. Deacon Han, why do you have the time to come here? Are you also here to look for the vice president? Hearing this, Han Dan smiled faintly. His old eyes swept over the old man and said, "It's nothing. It's just that this young friend wants to meet the vice president, so I brought him here." Immediately after, the old man's gaze finally noticed Xiao Yan, who was beside Han Dan. He immediately frowned. He did not expect that it would be Xiao Yan, whom he had met once before. Oh, so that's the case. I did not expect this young friend to be able to obtain the vice president's appreciation at such a young age. However, I'm sorry, I have an appointment with the vice president today. Therefore, I think you should come another day. The old man narrowed his eyes as he looked at Xiao Yan. His heart was a little surprised. He was naturally able to imagine the reason behind being personally led to this place by Han Dan. However, regardless of how one put it, he already had an agreement with the deputy chairman. It was impossible for him to give in because of any reason. Hearing this, Xiao Yan could not help but frown. If that was the case, it would be troublesome. However, Han Dan, who was beside him, grinned and said, "Grandmaster Zhao, even if that's the case, it's not up to you to decide who the vice president wants to meet. So, I think it's better to let the vice president choose for himself." As soon as these words came out, Master Zhao's face suddenly changed slightly, but then he laughed dryly, nodded, and didn't say anything more. After which, Han Dan left, leaving Xiao Yan and the other two seated opposite each other. Mr. is indeed a young hero. You were invited to join the Alchemist Alliance at such a young age. Your future can be said to be limitless. Mister, you flatter me. I'm just lucky. Hearing this, Xiao Yan smiled faintly, which was considered a response. Seeing this, Jia Ming, who was beside the old man, immediately frowned. Just as he was about to speak, he was stopped by the old man. I am Zhao Chuanchen, the chief alchemist of the Luli City's Alchemist Guild. Of course, after today, I am no longer one. I wonder where you are from? Zhao Chuanchen's gaze carefully sized up Xiao Yan. He believed that since the other party was able to be personally invited by the vice president of the Alchemist Guild, then the black-robed young man in front of him was definitely not a nobody. Xiao Clan. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Yan indifferently replied with these two words. However, when Zhao Chuanchen and Jia Ming heard this, the two of them immediately frowned. They had lived in the western region for many years, but they had never heard of such a force. Could it be some unknown small sect? Thinking of this, the master and disciple immediately sneered in their hearts. Since he was someone who came from one of those small forces, then there was basically nothing to be afraid of. Even if the vice president, Han Dong, personally invited him to join the Alchemist Alliance, in front of a high-rank alchemist, a fledgling kid was simply unable to influence anything. Rolling his eyes, Zhao Chuanchen's gaze once again landed on Xiao Yan's body. He grinned and laughed, "Little friend, to be honest, it's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's just that today, I indeed have an appointment with the vice president, Han Dong, and I will definitely have to meet him. At that time, I'm afraid that the vice president won't have the time to entertain you. Therefore, in order to not embarrass the vice president, why don't you leave first and stay in the city for a day before coming to visit?" At the same time these words were spat out, Zhao Chuanchen's pair of dark old eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. An invisible pressure came pouncing over. However, Xiao Yan ignored it as though it was nothing. With a sneer, Xiao Yan raised his eyes, stared at Zhao Chuanchen opposite him, and said in an indifferent tone, "From what I see, it's better for you to leave. Otherwise, the vice president will chase you away. If that's the case, I'm afraid that you won't be able to hold on to your old face. Brat, don't fail to appreciate my kindness. My teacher has rarely been so polite to others. Today, he is giving face to the vice president. Therefore, he is tolerating you. If you know what's good for you, you should leave this place as soon as possible. Otherwise, don't blame me for chasing you away." Seeing that Xiao Yan was indifferent, Jia Ming, who was beside Zhao Chuanchen, immediately felt that an opportunity had arrived. At the same time that his body stood up, an imposing pressure that belonged to a 5-star Dodi instantly surged out from his body and charged directly at Xiao Yan. However, in the face of this imposing pressure, Xiao Yan merely snorted coldly. Similarly, an invisible force immediately swept out. It was like an invisible storm. Before Zhao Chuanchen could react, it sent Jia Ming flying and violently smashed into the wall behind him. "Brat, don't go overboard when you do things. He is my disciple." By the time Zhao Chuanchen recovered, Jia Ming had already fallen to the ground with a pale face. His mouth repeatedly emitted a moaning sound. The former immediately turned his gaze that carried fury toward Xiao Yan as he angrily reprimanded. "Oh, that's right. If the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. The disciple deserves to be beaten. As the master, you deserve to be beaten even more." "What did you say?" After Xiao Yan's words fell, Zhao Chuanchen's mind immediately shook. However, before he could recover, Xiao Yan suddenly attacked and ruthlessly slapped Zhao Chuanchen across the air. In an instant, the latter did not have the chance to refute and his body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Subsequently, just as Xiao Yan was about to continue attacking, the tightly shut stone door in the depths of the hall slowly opened. At the same time, a somewhat familiar voice was emitted. "Xiao Yan, on account of this old man, let him off this time." Chapter 1094. At the same time that he heard that familiar voice, Xiao Yan's hand, which had just been lifted, paused. He smiled slightly and said, "Since the vice president has spoken, I naturally have to give him face. After not seeing you for a few years, I didn't expect you to be so different from before. Even I can't catch up to your cultivation. It's really like the new generation excels the old." The stone door opened, and an old man wearing an alchemist robe stepped out from behind the stone door. He looked at Xiao Yan with a kind smile on his face, and as he sized him up, his eyes were filled with amazement. Now, the black-robed young man in front of him had unknowingly become a person that even he could not help but sigh at. "President Han, after not seeing you for a few years, you are still as strong as ever." Turning towards Han Dong, Xiao Yan's face immediately revealed a thick smile. He hurriedly cupped his fists respectfully towards the former and said in a solemn tone. That's enough. If you have anything to say, let's talk inside. This old man doesn't think that you came here just to catch up." With a light wave of his hand, Han Dong invited Xiao Yan into the stone door. Only after the stone door in front of him closed did Zhao Chuanchen crawl up from the ground with a heart full of fear. He recalled the conversation between Han Dong and Xiao Yan just now, especially when he thought of Xiao Yan's name. The fear in his old eyes immediately became even more intense. Xiao Yan. He's actually that Xiao Yan. With the fear in his heart, Zhao Chuanchen panicked and left the alchemist alliance with Jia Ming as if he was fleeing. At the same time, Xiao Yan and Han Dong also sat down in the brightly lit stone room. "I say, there are only a few days left before the 10-day deadline, but why do you still have the time to come here?" After the two of them sat down, Han Dong casually poured a cup of tea for Xiao Yan and handed it to the latter. Xiao Yan received the tea in front of him, took a sip, and smiled. "I came here at this time because I want to repay the president's kindness. However, I wonder if he is in the alliance right now?" Hearing this, Han Dong could not help but look at Xiao Yan suspiciously. He did not think that the latter's purpose for coming here was really what he said. You're here for the embryonic phoenix pill, right? The president has already told me about it. Consider yourself lucky, kid. The president just returned not long ago and will be leaving the alliance again in a few days. If you came a few days later, I'm afraid you won't be able to see him." Han Dong laughed. Hearing this, Xiao Yan could not help but secretly let out a sigh of relief. If that was the case, it meant that he still had a chance. Kid, it seems like you still remember this old man." It was also at this moment that the tightly shut stone door opened once more. A slightly unkempt old man appeared before Xiao Yan and Han Dong. This person was the president of the Western Region Alchemist Alliance, Xing Gan. After not seeing him for a couple of years, Xing Gan still had that sloppy appearance from back then. However, the feeling that he gave off had changed for some unknown reason. When Xiao Yan's eyes landed on Xing Gan, the latter's face was filled with surprise as he sized Xiao Yan up. His heart felt extremely surprised. SSS. Brat, what kind of heavenly resources have you been eating these past few years? How has your cultivation advanced so quickly? You've already reached late origin transformation. Within a short couple of years, Xiao Yan's cultivation had leaped by a large margin compared to before. This really caused Xing Gan's heart to feel extremely shocked. Regardless of how great Xiao Yan's training talent was, it was impossible for him to raise his strength so quickly. Kid, you wouldn't have used some sort of evil secret technique, right? You have to understand that while those things can help you improve your cultivation, the disadvantages outweigh the advantages in the end. You absolutely can't treat your life as a joke. While he was shocked, Xing Gan could not help but link Xiao Yan's rapid increase in cultivation to some sort of evil secret technique. He even went so far as to step forward and examine Xiao Yan. However, Xiao Yan could not help but laugh at Xing Gan's rich imagination. He stood up and looked at Xing Gan with an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He clasped his hands respectfully and said, "Senior, please rest assured. Senior, please be at ease. Junior's cultivation is absolutely steady, and it's absolutely impossible for me to rely on any unorthodox methods." Are you telling the truth? Even though that was the case, Xing Gan was still doubtful. After all, Xiao Yan's rate of increase in cultivation was just too exaggerated. It was very difficult for him not to be suspicious. If Senior still has any doubts, please feel free to make a move. You'll know once you give it a try. A confident smile rose from the corners of Xiao Yan's lips as he exchanged glances with Xing Gan. At the same time, the Genesis Qi in the vortex in his body began to circulate. Xing Gan could not help but raise his brows when he saw this. Soon after, he looked at Xiao Yan in interest as a glint flashed in the depths of his old eyes. He, since that's the case, I won't hold back. Xing Gan did not hold back either. He raised his hand and dense Genesis Qi immediately rose from his palm. By the side, Han Dong frowned when he saw this and made way for the two. Xing Gan, who was only a few steps away from Xiao Yan, suddenly moved. As he took a step forward, he sent a palm strike towards Xiao Yan's chest. Although Xiao Yan was already prepared, he was shocked to discover that Xing Gan was much faster than he had imagined. Xing Gan's speed had long surpassed the limits of an origin transformation expert. Returnant stage. Xiao Yan's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, he came to a realization. No wonder Xiao Yan felt an indescribable sensation from Xing Gan's body. Xing Gan's cultivation had already broken through to the returnant stage. Xiao Yan did not dare to be negligent when he thought of this. A thought passed through his mind and the Genesis Qi in his body began to swiftly circulate. The Sky Extinction Step and the Wing Elephant Art were unleashed at the same time. Not only did Xiao Yan's speed increase, but even his overall movement and the maneuvering of his Genesis Qi had become much more agile. Xiao Yan swiftly raised his right hand in the face of the palm that was heading toward him. He opened his palm. A thought passed through his heart and a pale blue, heavenly flame swiftly agglomerated in his palm. It collided head-on with Xing Gan's palm at the same time. Boom! Soon after, a muffled collision sound appeared. Xiao Yan's right arm involuntarily trembled. Immediately, an incomparably large force attacked him from the front, forcing him back in one go. Only after he took over a dozen steps back did his body shake. The remaining force on his body was completely removed. This was also because Xing Gan had held back. As the two clashed, Xiao Yan, who was at the late origin transformation realm and one of the strongest experts in the western region, could not even last a single exchange against Xing Gan. From this, one could imagine just how terrifying a returnant's expert was. However, just as Xiao Yan steadied himself, Xing Gan withdrew his hand. Xing Gan's pupils abruptly shrank as he stared at the last wisp of extinguished blue flame in his hand. His heart was filled with surprise. With his eyesight, he was naturally able to tell that the wisp of flame was definitely a heavenly flame. However, based on his knowledge, among all the heavenly flames on the heavenly flame ranking, there did not seem to be any heavenly flame with a light blue flame. This caused him to be extremely shocked. However, at the same time, Xing Gan was certain that Xiao Yan's cultivation had not been obtained through unorthodox means. Although Xiao Yan was not his match in the previous clash, the power that the latter had erupted with was undoubtedly much greater than other experts of the same cultivation level. There was no need to doubt this. TSK, good kid, your cultivation is much thicker than I imagined. Looks like you've had quite a few miraculous encounters over the past few years. Xing Gan clicked his tongue and exclaimed at Xiao Yan after recovering. The latter smiled in a noncommittal manner upon hearing this. He withdrew the Genesis Chi that had been released from his body. With a flip of his hand, a jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. Elder, this is the third pill that this junior owes you, the embryonic phoenix pill. Upon seeing the jade bottle that Xiao Yan handed to him, Xing Gan's expression was first slightly stunned. Soon after, a satisfied smile appeared on his face as he laughed heartily. Good kid. You still remember what you owe me. Since that is the case, I shall accept it. Xing Gan received the jade bottle from Xiao Yan's hand without any courtesy. He roughly glanced at it and a surprised glint flashed across his old eyes. Only after which did he store the medicinal pill into his storage ring. His eyes once again landed on Xiao Yan. Little one, it seems that not only has your cultivation soared over the past few years, even your alchemy skills have never fallen behind. From what I can see, your current spiritual strength is likely comparable to a rank 5 alchemist. With the help of a heavenly flame, the quality of the pills you refine is indeed extraordinary. Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly when he heard this. Did this old man think that this medicinal pill was something that he had recently refined? However, he did not know just what kind of expression Xing Gan would reveal if he learned that this medicinal pill was something that Xiao Yan had refined when he had first entered the Northern Sea. Alright, I've already accepted the pill. You should tell me why you've come to the Alchemist Alliance. Han Dong's gaze instantly returned to Xiao Yan when these words were uttered. Xing Gan and Han Dong did not believe that Xiao Yan's purpose in coming to the Alchemist Alliance was as simple as returning the pill. Given the current situation in the Western region, most forces were maintaining a wait-and-see attitude, and the Alchemist Alliance was no exception. There was only one reason why Xiao Yan had come to them at this time. Since the two seniors have asked, then I shall not beat around the bush. I'm here to invite the Alchemist Alliance to cooperate and join forces. However, before Xiao Yan's voice died away, Xing Gan frowned and raised his hand, motioning for Xiao Yan to stop. Xiao Yan, you should know that our Alchemist Alliance belongs to the Pill Tower in the central region. Although our forces are all over the continent, we cannot get involved in the battle between the regional forces. This is also the reason why the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley is so arrogant and domineering in the western region, but has never set foot in distant Saint City. He is not only afraid of the Pill Tower behind the Alchemist Alliance, but also does not want to provoke us to get involved in their dispute for any reason. I hope you can understand this. So sorry, we have no reason to get involved in the battle between you and the Qin Wasteland Maze Valley. Chapter 1095. Xing Qian's words basically represented the Alchemist Alliance in rejecting Xiao Yan. This also meant that the Alchemist Alliance would never get involved in this matter no matter how Xiao Yan invited them. Xiao Yan could not help but frown helplessly when he thought of that. Since Xing Qian had already said that, there was obviously no need for him to say anything more. Of course. Although we are unable to send anyone to help you, you are still a member of our Alchemist Alliance. The face of a member of our Alchemist Alliance naturally has to be taken care of by us. Keep this medicinal pill. Perhaps there will be a time when you will need it. Xing Gan's eyes rotated when he noticed the helpless expression that Xiao Yan revealed on his face. Immediately, he took out a jade bottle from his storage ring. There was also a medicinal pill within it. However, just from the fact that Xing Gan had taken it out, this medicinal pill was definitely not something that an ordinary medicinal pill could compare with. At the very least, Xiao Yan did not think that he currently possessed any medicinal pill with a value that could compare with this. Class 6 Pill, the Dragon Bone Pill. It can greatly increase your cultivation in a short amount of time. The side effects are basically negligible. Once the medicinal effects are too great, the user will fall into a deep sleep for an hour. It's just a pity that refining this pill is rather complicated. Even I only have one. I hope it'll be of use to you. Xing Gan's voice was transmitted into Xiao Yan's ears when he extended his hand to receive the medicinal pill. A surprised glint immediately surged into Xiao Yan's eyes when he heard the words Tier 6 medicinal pill. It was unexpected that Xing Gan would take out a Tier 6 medicinal pill. Soon after, his heart was shocked when he heard about the medicinal effects of this dragon bone pill. Being able to greatly increase the cultivation of an origin transformation expert within a short period of time. Just this point alone was already sufficiently shocking. This dragon bone pill was indeed worthy of being a Tier 6 medicinal pill. If there were a couple more of them, Xiao Yan was confident that he would be able to finish off Yi Luotian's group by himself. With Xiao Yan's current cultivation, the dragon bone pill could allow him to reach returnance in a short amount of time. If there were a few more, the effects would be unimaginable. Brat, don't think too much about it. For pills like this that can increase cultivation, no matter how many you eat at once, only one pill will have an effect. Furthermore, although this dragon bone pill doesn't have many side effects, because of its medicinal properties, consuming another dragon bone pill within 3 months after consuming it will not have any effect. Instead, it will prolong the medicinal effects in your body, causing you to be unable to consume it again for a longer period of time in the future. Of course, if anyone is stubborn enough to refine it and make it work, only death awaits them. Xiao Yan immediately curled his lips when he heard what Xing Qian had said. He looked away and quickly put the jade bottle away carefully. Only after that did he smile in an embarrassed manner. He obviously understood what Xing Qian was saying, but it was just his imagination. Oh right, I still haven't asked you. What are your chances of victory in the battle against the Qin Wasteland Maze? According to what I know, the Qin Wasteland Maze has a total of 4 origin transformation experts, but you and the girl from the Shilin Mountain Range only have 2 origin transformation experts. Don't tell me you're placing all your hopes on my alchemist alliance. Xing Gan's and Han Dong's faces immediately revealed a worried expression when they returned to the main topic. After all, this concerned a battle between origin transformation experts. Just the difference of one person could decide the outcome of the battle in an instant. Based on the current situation, the strength of Xiao Yan's side that he was aware of made it difficult for him not to worry. Please do not worry, seniors. Whatever the Qin Wasteland Maze has, we will only have more than them. Moreover, from what I see, the true trouble in the battle against the Qin Wasteland Maze is not them but Yi Luotian. Xing Qian and Han Dong relaxed slightly when they heard Xiao Yan's words, but soon after, they began to frown again. The two of them looked at each other and confusion involuntarily appeared in their eyes. It was obvious that they were not familiar with this Yi Luotian. Yi Luotian is the sect master of the Withered Leaf sect, one of the 4 great sects of the Shilin region. This person hides himself extremely well. Back in the ancient tomb of Heaven's End, he was the one who single-handedly finished off the other 2 sect masters of the 4 great sections. Afterwards, he even forcefully swallowed up the 4 great sects before allying with the Qin Wasteland Maze. Xiao Yan's simple explanation allowed the two of them to immediately understand the cause and effect of the changes in the western region over the past few years. From the looks of it, all these changes were caused by this Yi Luotian. After all, before Xiao Yan allied with the Qin wasteland maze, the latter had always kept a low profile and lived in seclusion in the western desolate region. In fact, many people in the entire western region had already gradually forgotten about this super faction that had once dominated the entire western region. To think that this Yi Luo Tian actually has such means. With his strength alone, he is actually able to make the already hidden Qin wasteland maze appear once again. The two of them frowned as they looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. However, Xiao Yan gently shook his head in response. His words were filled with deep meaning as he spoke to Xing Qian. Senior, do you really believe that he alone is able to stir up such a storm in the western region? Aren't you overestimating him? Without waiting for the two of them to open their mouths to ask, Xiao Yan quickly continued. According to what I know, in the western region, other than these factions that we already know, there are still other factions hidden in the dark. These factions are not originally from the western region, but have spread out from other provinces. Or rather, they are branches that have spread here. After Xiao Yan's words sounded, Xing Qian and Han Dong's eyes involuntarily flashed. Xiao Yan's eyelids slightly lowered, as if he did not notice anything. In reality, Xiao Yan had always been very clear about these so-called external factions. Regardless of whether it was the Alchemist Alliance, the Ghost Hall, or even the Union Pavilion and the Heavenly Clouds auction house, he was very clear that these factions that he knew of all originated from the same place on the continent. The Middle Region. However, the current situation was still unclear. Xiao Yan was also unable to determine why they had spread their factions to the outskirts of the continent. However, he was certain that there was definitely some sort of hidden connection between these factions. Soon after, when the two of them regained their senses, Xiao Yan once again spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth instantly caused the expressions of the two to change. The faction behind Yi Luo Tian is a faction from the middle region called the Ghost Hall.